The following program features language some listeners may find offensive. Listener discretion is advised.
When I did the KRS-One gig, right, my computer died on the Sunday, so I couldn't use Serato. So I was like, right, I'm going to play a vinyl set. I walked in, I could see people looking at me like, oh, he's going to play vinyl or whatever. But I did a vinyl set. I loved it. Playing classics, whatever, Big Daddy Kane, Mobb Deep, whatever, all that sort of thing. And then I heard over the monitors then the engineer, he was like, KRS-One's going to come on soon, pull the faders down, and then we'll just put some background music on before he comes on. I was like, yeah, of course. So I started pulling it down. As I pulled the music down, all I heard was the crowd chanting my name. And that's what I feel. It's just like love like that. If I had gone from that gig and gone home and died that night, I would have died very happy. Forget money, forget fame. It's just like a little club in Cardiff and people calling my name is just like, yeah, I love this.
You are listening to Hip Hop Cymru Wales, a podcast exploring the trails and untold tales of Welsh hip hop. My name is Luke Bailey and I'm a podcaster, best known for the Fly Fidelity podcast, and I'm talking to key players about the notable and nuanced evolution of Welsh hip hop history.
Stop on my man who gon' rock a jam.
Dedicate this to all Welsh DJs.
Take it back to brass knucks and blast those. Must be a bar for every nebulous love.
Yellow brick days of Welsh heritage.
Don't mess with the wicked.
Smash down the walls, the revolution's coming at you.
We rolled into town with mics in our holster.
Captain of our ship, with a master of our fate.
With a dream to succeed where most men fail.
Rock stars, bars, hard and Belushi flesh.
As soon as I hit the stage, my presence is felt.
You wanna rock up on my mic, I'll bang ya.
The story ever told for me.
From the land of the mystical, mythical dragon hearts.
Gritty, my life story.
DJ and producer DJ Jaffa is this week's guest on the program. Known for rocking jams during hip-hop's earliest development, Jaffa leveraged his success as a local staple into a permanent position as one of Wales's most recognised DJs today. On this episode, we discuss his incredible journey so far, as well as the many groups in which he's been a member of, and more.
Yeah, my name's DJ Jaffa. Basically, I started in my whole hip hop journey in around about 82, 83. I remember watching like certain like clips on TV programs of breaking and stuff from America. I think it was like not Stephen King. It was some King who had a travel shows like about America and stuff, and you go around different places. And I remember seeing like a Hershey's chocolate advert, and then it sort of went from Hershey's chocolate being whipped. And then it went into like someone doing a windmill. But then like in 83, like I saw the Buffalo Girls video, Malcolm McLaren. And that was just like, what's this? It was just everything. It was just like graffiti, the whole of hip hop culture encapsulated in one video, basically. And I was still in school, and I thought I was the only person who was really into all of this. So I remember someone came up to me on the field then in school and said, "Oh, you're into breakdancing, aren't you?" And all that. I was like, "Yeah." And that was my mate Chrissy Stevens. And we just basically clicked up from there, and just any chance we could get, we were doing like caterpillars on the school field and all sorts of, just any space we could get, we were practicing. And we were taking technical drawing classes, but it got to a point and we weren't taking the exams, so it was just like pointless just being there, to be honest. And we said to our technical drawing teacher, he said, "Oh, space at the back of the classroom. Can we practice?" And he was like, "What are you on about?" He said, "Oh, can we practice breaking?" And he was like, "Oh, show me." So we started breaking in the back of the classroom. He was like, "Yeah, as long as you don't disturb the rest of the class, you're good." And that lasted a few weeks, and that was it, because the rest of the classes weren't concentrating; they were just watching us. And then we decided to go like venture into town, sort of like in our b-boy gear, the fat laces and all of that sort of thing. and that's where I first met 40. And he was battling this crew from Port Talbot, this guy Jazz, and I can't remember the other guys' names, but and yeah, he just sort of like saw us. And back then, it was like you knew someone was into hip hop by the way they dressed. Like I said, the fat laces and stuff like that. It was just like it's not like it is now, where everyone's wearing Jordans or something or whatever, and it's just across the board. You could be into you could be in a punk band and still be dressed like a b-boy, So he saw us and he was just like, oh, come and help us out. So we went over and battled this crew from Port Talbot, and that was our first ever battle. And it was just like, wow, loving this. And then from then on, we were just in town every Saturday, hanging out outside Olympus Sports. That seemed to be the spot. And then it was like going into we go into the St. David's Centre. Someone would bring a beatbox along and plug it into the wall where the floor cleaners were supposed to be plugged into. So we'd just plug it in there, and we'd just like start messing around in the centre until we got chased out. And then a friend of mine, Alex Kerr, he went to Bristol this one weekend, and he saw some b-boys up there. It was like E-Force and what was the guy's name? Nathan was the main guy, and then it was Gazoo and Pencil. And he was like talking to these guys. And he was like, yeah, if you come down to Cardiff, we'll kick your ass. We'll battle you and whatever. And they were like, yeah, okay, bet we'll come down. So they come down the next Saturday, a massive bit of lino. And this is like, there used to be like a big stone circle just outside the centre, where I think there's a Tesco's there now, but it used to be like Virgin Records there back in the day and stuff. But it used to be like it was like a big sort of stone circle, like a sort of bandstand. They put the liner out there, and the only people who showed up were me, my mate Chrissy, and this other guy Mark Allen, who was in what was the crew he was in? Electro Force, I think it was, from Splotway. And we battled them and got our asses handed to us. They completely wiped the floor of us. But they showed us a lot of respect after that. They were like, you held your own, but you didn't have a chance. And they said, is there anywhere else you can go now after you battled and that? And we said about Maskell's in Newport. Right. Maskell's was like a roller skating rink. There was a guy who used to go and buy like imports and stuff from this one record shop in Newport, and just take him to Maskell's on a Saturday afternoon and just play his records. And b-boys used to come and from up the valleys, Newport, Cardiff, wherever, and just practice and battle. So we went there, and it was like Cardiff and Bristol against everyone else. And it was nice to be on the winning team for once. So after that, they were like, oh, do you fancy coming up to Bristol on the weekends and just like practice and go to jams or whatever? So me and Chrissy decided, we were still in school at the time. We were like about 14, 15, something like that. And we decided, we'll come up to Bristol. So, and then it went on from there. We'd come home from school on a Friday, get changed, go to the train station, catch the train to Bristol, and come home on the Sunday. Sometimes come home on the Monday morning. But it was like all the older boys, they used to look after us up there. It was this like it was Dennis Murray, who went on to be a DJ, but I'll get to that. And then it was like Nathan, Gazoo, Pencil, all those boys, Smurf. They all used to look out for us because we were younger, but they used to take us to, there was a bandstand in Bristol where they all used to practice, just stick lino out and practice there. And then they take us to jams. We go to like Wild Bunch parties and stuff. And there was like, there was one in Notting Hill. I think it was like Notting Hill or something like that they took us to. We had to go to the Milo, one of the guys in the Wild Bunch. We had to go to his house and get tickets, and then we just got on a coach I remember going to the coach, and it was like they were calling out all the names that come on the coach, and they called out Jaffa. And there's a graffiti artist in Bristol called Jaffa as well. I think it was like Jaffa and Fade or something like that. There was two graffiti artists. So he was like, which one? And he was like, look, oh, you. So, but yeah, we used to go to parties like that. And we went to this one in, I think it was Notting Hill, something like that. But it was some proper Beat Street shit. It was just like, we had to sneak down past the security guards and break the chain with bullcroppers into this warehouse. And there was like about 3 sound systems set up in there. It was a Wild Bunch was one of them. And then I think it was like Nutriment or something like that. And then another one. But yeah, we went there. We was like the youngest there. And the actual jam is on, there's a graffiti documentary called Bombing. And the jam is featured on that. Because we got there, we were like looking around, like, why are all these cameras here? What's going on? Yeah. But there's a graffiti documentary called Bombing, and the main guy in Bombing is what's his name now? Brim from New York. It's basically a documentary about him coming to the UK and going around, and he met like Goldie and people like that. But he went to this jam, and and that's the first time I ever saw like Sifo was there. I got told about him back then, and like Dennis he was just messing around with some b-boys doing a bit of footwork or whatever, and Dennis sort of pointed to him and said, "Oh, you check that guy out over there. That's the best human beatbox in Britain." And then obviously years later, part of the London Posse and all that. But and then it sort of got like broken up about 5 a.m. Police raided the place, told us to get out. Told us, a load of coppers told us to go one way, started walking one way, and then this other cop said, no, you got to go back that way. So he pointed us the other way. Back of a van burst open, police dogs out, chased us. So that was the whole hip hop thing back then. It was all crazy shit like that happening. Yeah, that was my life for a while. It was just going to Bristol as a b-boy, basically. Then going to parties, and that sort of started the seed in my head. The seed started growing in my head. It was like, I like all this DJing thing. Back in Cardiff, I used to go to my local youth centre in Whitchurch, and there was me and Chrissy. Like anytime, like anything remotely hip hop came on, we just hit the floor like youth club disco on a Friday, and they play like Break Machine or some shit. It was just like, yeah, let's just do it. So we just like clear the floor and do our little thing and whatever. And then there was like Sweep, who was the DJ there. He's like every now and again he'd let me sort of DJ. So that was my first sort of foray into DJing, was playing them. But wasn't like 2 separate turntables in the mix. It was like a proper Disco Dave setup. But that's how I started. That's my first thing, doing that. I was carrying on going to Bristol. About 86, the Wild Bunch had been in New York. They came back just in time for Carnival. And they had a grant and stuff to get this massive sound system, and they were right at the top. There's a road that goes down. I don't know the name of the road, but it goes from the top and it goes all the way down, and it comes to the front line in St. Paul's. But they were right at the top, so their sound is carried. And then you go down a little bit further, there was another sound system. Then you go a bit further, another sound system. And I was hanging with Dennis Murray, and he went on eventually to be DJ Easy Groove, who was like a big sort of jungle DJ. He used to do all the massive raves and stuff like that. But he started out as a b-boy and then went into DJing. But I was with him, and he was DJing for a sound system called Galaxy Affair. And he was the first person I ever saw in front of me backspinning 2 copies of the same record. And it was headline news by Midnight Star. And it's like starts off with extra, read all about it. And then this like sort of go hip hop beat comes in. And he was just doing that back and forth, like, extra, read all about it, extra, and just backspinning that. And it blew my mind. I was just like, because I'd seen bits of it, on TV and whatever. But to actually see it, I've seen the Wild Bunch doing it, but it was never like I could reach out and touch the turntable sort of thing. And that was it. And it was my mate doing it. Do you know what I mean? It was like, yeah, this is what I want to do.
So you were experiencing this right at the start, of course, of its infancy.
Yeah.
What was it that sticks out about these moments and resonate with you in terms of the music, which were, you know, very formative moments for you that were developing what it was you heard back then?
It was weird because it was like, I heard Rapper's Delight when it first came out. But I just thought it was a disco record because I had no reference point back then. It was just like 79 that came out, and it was disco, which I knew about because my mother was into disco and she was into like Motown and stuff like that. So I knew of disco, you know, and this was a disco record that came out, but they were just talking on it instead of singing. So, but I had no, you know, back then it was just like, I had no idea about hip hop. Those two words that had never come out my mouth, and I've never heard them come out of anyone else's mouth. So apart from in the lyrics of Rapper's Delight. So I was just like, I don't even know what this is, but I loved it. And then obviously years later, Malcolm McLaren, that made it all a bit clearer. Right. But when we were breaking, it was like the whole electro thing was going on. It was more, you get like an electro tune and it might be like an 8-bar rap in it or something like that. It wouldn't be full on rap stuff. It would be more electro stuff. And it was like the Street Sounds compilations albums, they were like the holy grail because they you know, it was non-stop, mixed by, you know, Mastermind Roadshow used to mix them, and perfect mixes. They just put a tape on. You'd have one side of the tape would be one side of the album, the other side, whatever. But it was continuous, so it was perfect. It would one like you record a record out after the other, and it stopped. So like for battles and stuff like that, perfect soundtrack. But then at the time, it was just literally just a tool. You know, I didn't really look too deep into the music. I knew I liked it, but I didn't really look too deep into the music until I stopped breaking and got more interested in the DJing. And then I was like more into the music and stuff. And then it was like the Street Sounds compilations, not the electro compilations, just the Street Sounds compilations. They became more of a thing for me because they were like, they weren't mixed. They were just the single tunes on the compilation album. So I was getting these boogie 12s, extended mixes and stuff on an album, which cost like $7.99. I'm getting like about £100 worth of records on one album and stuff. So they were perfect because the whole scene of like hip hop, boogie, electro, and everything, you know, the whole rap and everything that started coming in, then it was all one thing. Even the house music, when Chicago House started coming out, I just looked at that as that was just an extension of hip hop.
Absolutely.
You know, it was like the whole the way it was all sample based and stuff. You know, it was just like, yeah, it was just another branch of hip hop for me.
It harkened back to Soul Sonic Force, didn't it?
Yeah, definitely. It was all the similar sounds, and it was very like back then as well. It was very rare to get a sort of like 90 BPM tune. It was all quite up tempo music, which was, you know, was great for like the b-boys and stuff like that. So it was, you know, and I think as time went on, the BPM started coming down a bit more, but a majority of the stuff, it was sort of up tempo, and it was like, that's why the boogie and the boogie sort of side of it fitted in with the hip hop and the Chicago house. It's like the house music you get now. It's quite fast. You know, back then it was like a house record would be anything between 115 to 120 BPM and 128 BPM. That was pretty fast for a house record back then, you know, and then as time went on, it sort of got a bit faster, but I think that's why it all fitted in together. And it was all coming from a similar place, you know what I mean, as well. So it was like sort of different disenfranchised communities, sort of like struggle music, basically.
You mentioned your parents. What is it they're thinking about these foundational moments, culturally, musically?
Yeah, it's like my mother was into like disco and Motown and stuff when she was younger and that. But as time went on, she became very sort of like very sort of conservative in not in like her political views, but in her sort of like musical taste. So she'd be more into classical music and stuff like that. What I was doing, she didn't really pay that much attention to be honest. It's just like, yeah, he's got his thing and that's it. He's happy, fine. And that was it. You know, it's honestly, it was just like, yeah, that was it. It was whatever. You know, she didn't know what I was doing. And it was like me going to Bristol and stuff like that. I always think I was like a bit of an experiment on her nerves. It was to see how far they could be stretched. Because it was back then, you know, no mobile phones, anything like that. The only time she could get in touch with me and find out where I was if I phoned her. And most of the time I was enjoying myself too much to phone her, to be honest. It was, you know, it'd be like, bye, I'm going now, Friday, Sunday night or Monday morning, come back. Oh, I'm going to school now.
Different
that was it. Yeah, it's different times.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What do you think are some of the biggest misconceptions in terms of the earliest foundations of hip hop back then?
That it was violence. It wasn't really music. You know, the same old thing. It's like there's been generations and people looked at like jazz music the same. They looked at rock and roll the same.
Right.
Look at hip hop the same. To be honest, I think rap has got more of a bad rap, you know, excuse the pun, but because with the other ones, at least, people would look at it and be like, oh, well, at least they're playing traditional musical instruments.
Yeah.
People would look at hip hop and they're like, well, they're just putting their hands on records and moving them back and forward and talking over beats and stuff. It was just totally alien to people. So it was just like, it got, you know, it wasn't just the older generation who were looking at it as this crazy fad that they thought just wasn't music. There was people my age who were, you know, I was a kid and there was people my age looking at it like, oh, this is crap. This is nothing. It's not music. Because it was so alien. It was just, you know, this crazy sort of like new thing that no one had ever seen before. Yeah. So I think, you know, not, like I said, not only did it get that generational sort of hate, it got hate from the younger generation as well. The younger generation who didn't understand it, didn't want to be part of it. And yeah, it was, I remember, you know, going to the local youth centre and a majority of the people who went there were either mods or punks. And they didn't want to hear any of it. And, you know, and you get people who would just go there and they'd just listen to the top 40 or whatever. You go there, I'd put a tape on or something and it'd be like, I know some early rap stuff on it or whatever. And they were like, get this shit off. What's this? So yeah, you just get a lot of hate from all of that. But then, you know, look at it now and it's just like ruling the world. It's crazy to think about it.
You're somebody who recognized the sustainability early, and you're somebody who went on this, you know, long quest to change the perception of what the turntable is and how it could compete with the guitar as an instrument. There's a period when breaking first happens and you had B-boys and B-girls, of course, who were mixing with graph and jumping on the mic behind the turntables. Was that something you experimented with before your intentions to become a DJ were fully crystallized?
Well, before I got turntables, my mother had an old sort of like these old stereo unit. It was literally like a turntable on it, a tape deck and a radio. And and she gave me her old one, and that's how I learned to scratch. So before I had turntables, that's how I learned to scratch on that. So I suppose, yeah, I would experiment, and it had to sort of like work out how to do it, because it's like the actual stereo system. Didn't have like knobs for the volume. It had faders, but it was like, so it fade up the volume, and it had a balance. You can fade from left to right or whatever, and it had a tone fader and stuff like that, which I think, a lot of them had like knobs and stuff. So I was quite sort of like lucky with that. So what I used to do, I used to take one of the speakers out the back, put the balance all the way over to that where the speaker I'd taken out, and then move it back slightly. So when I put it full volume, it wouldn't be like blasting. It'd be loud enough, but it wouldn't be blasting. Mm-hmm. And that's how I learned to scratch. I used to, with the turntable, it used to be on like a spring-loaded sort of bass. And there was like screws on either side. And if you screwed them all the way up, it would like be rigid. I think it was like for travel or something like that. They put it in. But I'd screw it all the way up so it was rigid. I'd get a bit of cardboard, then cut a bit of cardboard, put it on, because I found out, I found out really, really late that if I just put a record, because it wasn't rubber, the bass, the actual platter, it was like hard plastic. And I started scratching, and then it scratched the B-sides of the record. So it was just like, I put the B-side on it, and it was like, I was like, what's happening? And I noticed, and it was like, okay, right, I've got to do something here. So I got cardboard and put the cardboard on there. So I'd taken the speaker out, moved it across, got the full volume, cardboard on there, little bit of tissue or whatever in, so it held tight on the spindle. And then I had a boom box. I used to play beats on this boom box, and I practiced scratching on that deck. It was just using the actual volume fader as a crossfader, but it obviously bring it all the way up. And I didn't have like a massive booming sound, because I was put the balance over. But yeah, that was me sort of experimenting and trying to find out how I could do this without actually having turntables. So that's how I learned to scratch, before I even had turntables. So yeah, the experimentation is just like started out really early with that.
You scratching is essentially born from you taking this cardboard and remixing the process.
Yeah, just taking this one sort of stereo system, basically, and then just like revamping it into something I could use to scratch with.
Which is the depiction of hip-hop.
Yeah.
What was the first record you scratched?
Oh, man. I don't even know. It was probably some old Motown tune, to be honest.
Which would have been your parents', right?
Which is my mother's. So I think it was probably like the Donna Summer and the Supremes or something like that. It was like Love Fool or something. I don't know. But yeah, I just wanted to scratch anything, any sound, and it just sort of worked it out, because it's back then as well. You didn't have YouTube. You didn't have, it was whatever I saw on little clips on TV, right, I could copy. And then the other side of it was just trying to interpret what I heard. So it's like, if I hear the routine, like I remember John Peel broadcast a lot of the DMCs. I think it was the year when DJ Cheese won. So it was around about 86, 87, something like that. And I taped those off the radio and just listened to what he was doing. I was like, how is he doing this? And just trying to work it all out. But yeah, that's all we had back then. It was just, we had to use our ears, so yeah, it was, it was like, it was hard, but we did it. And then, and then I think it was like 86 then, obviously, Wild Bones come, seen Dennis Murray cutting up. And then that was the year I got my first set of turntables. And yeah, that was just amazing. I just locked myself in the room for It seemed like a year. It probably wasn't even that long. That long. It wasn't probably one a year, but it seemed like a year. I just locked myself in my room, and just practiced over and over again by going to town, buying double copies of record. I remember buying 2 copies of Rocksteady by Aretha Franklin. And people look at me like, why are you buying 2 copies of the same records? Why are you wasting your money? You know, and it's just like, yeah, you don't know what I'm on about. So it's just like, yeah, that was my thing. You know, I just do that.
Where were you buying your records? Where were you digging back then?
Anywhere and everywhere. I'd go earlier on. It was literally just going into town to. There was a Virgin Records, which was opposite the castle. So it was the other end of Queen Street. The castle end of Queen Street. There was a Virgin Records there. I used to go there. They had a really good sort of black music section in there.
Nice.
HMV. They didn't, you know, obviously back then they didn't have a hip hop section, but it was a tiny import section. And I mean tiny. It was literally like you had to get about 20 records in there, maybe. Some of them were like sort of like high energy dance records and everything, but every now and again you get a gem. It's like I bought The Bridge by MC Shan and Marley Marl in there, and that was the original on Bridge Records. I got what else was it? Schoolie D, PSK. I got that in there on import when it first came out. I got Just Call Us Death by Steady B. So there was some real dope records, but it was literally, you know, they'd have 1 copy, and you had to go in regular to get them, you know, and then you might go in for a few weeks straight, you know, and there wouldn't be anything, and then all of a sudden they'll have like, you know, Set It Off by Straff or something like that. They'll have that in, you know, and then you're like, oh, grab that. But the price, it was crazy. It was like imports back then. You're talking like £7.99 for a 12-inch single. And sometimes it would be like, you might get a radio mix, an extended mix, and an instrumental. And sometimes you'd only get, on some 12s, you get like an extended mix, and then on the B-side, a radio mix, and that's it. It's just like, it's just crazy prices, right? You know, it's just, so you're saving, you know, I was working back then as well. And so it's like trying to save up, and it's just like, no, this is crazy. And double copies, you know, exactly. of things like that, you know, it's $7.99 at 12. So you're talking like 16 quid for 2 copies of the same records. You know, it's ridiculous prices.
That's a lot of money back then, right? It's a lot of money now.
Oh, exactly. That's what I say to people now. It's like I was some of the guys from Barbacasso and that they'd send me their tunes, and then I'd buy them anyway on iTunes or Bandcamp or whatever. And they're like, "Why are you buying them? We're sending it." I was like, "Look, I used to spend $7.99 on a 12-inch single. 79p ain't shit, mate. So don't worry about it." It's just like, okay, good, and it you know, it helps the artist. So that's all it is, you know.
Give me 5 examples of songs or albums that changed the way you think about rap as a fan and a DJ.
Oh, right, okay.
No pressure.
No. Just to say it straight off, I don't like the top 5s because they always change. I listen to so much music and stuff, and it's like even back then, I listened to so much music, and my top 5 would change all the time. But let me think. But Raising Hell, Run DMC, definitely. I mean, like you know, Peter Piper. Peter Piper, I think, was my first proper juggle 2 copy. But I had the 12-inch, and I had Raising Hell album. And for anyone who knows about like the way records are pressed and stuff like that, like 12 inches are always like louder than an albums. It's like the way, you know, they're spaced out and stuff like that. So they always press quite lower quality, right, or lower volume. So it was just trying to adjust the volumes and stuff like that to get it all right. And then obviously you're counting the turns and stuff, but obviously the 12-inch is going round a bit faster than the album, and it was just a mess. But that was the first one I actually did, you know, and then obviously I went on and got proper 12s double copies and stuff. But Raising Hell, I think, that's sort of stuck in my mind. Let me think, what else? I think the Electro albums, I think my favorite one of that was Electro 8. So I think, you know, I've got a soft spot for Electro 8. So I'd say that one.
Nice.
Let me think. Oh, do you know what? Beastie Boys, License to Ill. We, like, me and my mate Daz rinsed that album completely. Daz went up to when it came out on import. He went up. His dad used to work for the transport police, so he had like a train pass, so he could travel on the trains for free. So he got up real early on a Saturday morning, jumped on the train, went all the way to London, waited outside Groove Records in Greek Street for their delivery. They had License to Ill. He bought a copy, took it back to the train station, jumped on the train, came back, and then went straight to the youth club. And he was just rinsing that in the youth club all day. That album was wicked. There was a lot of like 12s and stuff as well back then. So it was like albums, 12. It's like Nobody Beats the Biz. That was just like such an amazing tune. Big Daddy Kane, Raw. It was that era, you know. It's like I remember playing, I supported KRS One recently, and I did a all vinyl set, and I dropped Raw, and it was a load of my mates. It's like my mate Daz was there, and a load of all the boys and stuff, and the cheer that came out when I dropped Raw, it was like, yeah, my people. But
it just transcends a time, doesn't it?
Oh, it's such a good tune. It's just like all the Juice Crew tunes that came out. It's like MC Shan's first album doesn't get the respect it deserves. Well, saying that, his first and his second album, they're so good. You know, we pioneered this on his second album. Such a tune. Back then as well, it was like the market wasn't saturated like it is now. There wasn't so much. So you could buy an album and then there wouldn't be anything that came out for another week or so, or 2 weeks or whatever, sometimes a month. But they were all classic. There was it didn't seem to be any throwaway tunes back then.
They took their time.
Yeah, definitely.
Take me through the lead up to your first gig, which happens in a doorway next to a donut shop on Queen Street, Cardiff.
Yeah, it's a doorway next to Rudy's Donut Store, which it was in Queen Street, Cardiff, but it was like the opposite end to the castle. It was the other end of Queen Street. If people don't know, that Queen Street is like a pedestrianised shopping street in Cardiff. It's like one huge long street with all pedestrian. And then Rudy's Donut Store was right on the corner at the far ends. And it was run by this old Jamaican guy who's his daughter was friends with for a few of us like few mates in St. Mellons and all that, and I sort of knew her through them. And he said, "Yeah, come down on Saturday, set up in the doorway next, we'll have a party." I was like, "Cool." I got sort of pushed by a lot of my mates. They were like, "Come on, you need to come out. You need to do this jam. You need to do this. You need to." So I think I hired like some speakers and an amp. I didn't even know what I was looking for. I was just like, "Yeah, okay, that'll do." And I hired these speakers and an amp. I had a little sort of fold-up table, set my decks up, and started playing. I took a microphone with me because basically that was, for me, that was the whole reason I wanted to be a DJ. I loved the thing of cutting back for and all that, but my whole thing was I wanted to be a DJ for a rapper. I was quite introverted. I wanted to sort of play the back, but be part of a rap group, so I want that introverted to not want to be on stage, but I just wanted to play the back. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, and I just wanted to be this sort of ominous figure in the back doing the scratches and stuff. So yeah. So I took this microphone with me, And I started playing. And next thing I know, the instrumental part of the record's on, but there was this voice. I was like, what's that? I looked up, and there was this guy, DK. He's from Gibraltar in Cardiff, and he was rapping over the instrumental part of it was Put Your Feelers On by Schoolie D. And I had 2 copies of it, so I was like, all right, I'm gonna cut this back and forth. So I started cutting back and forth, and he was just carried on rapping. I was like, oh mate, this is it. This is what I want to do. And yeah, and he just like put the microphone down, and I just carried on playing, and I didn't, there's no way of getting his details. And he just sort of like stopped rapping and then jet, and that was it. And I thought, oh, okay, that's it. I'm never going to see him again. I didn't know who he was. I didn't know if he was from Cardiff or he was from out of town or what. But that was the highlight of the day. It was like we got the thing of the police came along and like, oh, I'm got a permit for this. You got to turn it off. And we turned it off, wait for him to go. Some of the boys were like, oh, I better go and teach something now then, and all this. It's like, haha. They went away and we turned it back on again. And, it was that thing. We were just like, we were young. We didn't care. We just wanted the music, permit what? We just don't care. Like, and then a few months later, then we decided, if this is like, we had a crew then. Well, it was sort of like 2 crews that sort of merged.
Right.
It was like the Melody Boys and Hard Rock Concept. So we called ourselves. And it was, back then it was like just me for the, and then it was like Akko, who went under the name of Como, who's a graffiti artist. There was Leroy Bishop, who went under the name of Finer Outline. He was a graffiti artist. And then it was just mates. It was like my mate Daz and a few other people like, and they were like, oh, just try and put a jam on somewhere. And we were all like hanging around in Grassroots, which is a city centre youth project in Cardiff, which is still there now. It's still going, still helping kids out, whatever. It was a place to go and hang out. It helped people with like any problems they had or whatever. But we used to just go there, hang out, play music. They had a big hall there then. It was like, now I think it's taken up by offices and then they got a studio there and stuff like that. But with that space downstairs, it was like, that was a big hall. And they had a sound system there and stuff. So we were speaking to this guy, Mark. He used to sort of like, he used to talk to us and stuff and like what we were listening to and what we were doing, It's like if you were to go down there and like beatboxing and just messing around or whatever. But we said to him, oh, can we have the centre for a jam on a Saturday, like a Saturday afternoon or something? And he said, well, we're not really open on a Saturday, but I tell you what, I'll come down, I'll open up, I'll set up the sound system and you do your thing. That was wicked. He didn't have to do that, but that was wicked. So yeah, we did the first one. The first one we got, like, I think Leroy did the flyer for it. And we just went out giving these flyers out. Yeah, hip hop jam, Grassroots Saturday, blah, blah, blah. And we got around, and then basically set up Leroy, who was the graffiti artist, but he also used to. It was like we wanted to be the MC of the night or the day, sort of introducing everyone and stuff like that. And the first one, it was like, that's when I first met Eric. This is MC Eric, went on to be MC Eric from Tentatonic and stuff. But yeah, he came in, he was just like, yeah, I'm a rapper, I want to jump on. I was like, wicked. Yeah, he jumped on. I think DK came to the first one. I can't actually remember, to be honest. I think he did though. And then there was another guy, Bubba, Richard Smith. And he just looked like he was just come straight from New York because his dad lived in America and used to send him over all his gear. So he had like the Adidas sort of like tops, like like Run DMC had. He had like, the sneakers, everything. He was like kitted out. And like he jumped on. There was Mike C as well, Michael Kiaga. He jumped on. For the, we had a whole crew then. That was it. That was the sort of genesis of our crew.
There really wasn't the tug of war there is now between a DJ and the MC as well, was there?
No, it was back then. It was the MC controlled the mic, the DJ controlled the music, and that was it. So there was no sort of like the MC being the star. It was a group thing. It was a collaboration. It's back then. It was just like, you know, it was our crew. It was the crew was the main thing, you know, and it wasn't. There was no one person who was in charge. Whereas obviously now it's like you hardly know if a rapper's got a DJ or not these days. It's just like, you know, but yeah, it was back then, and it was. I remember, you know, there was a thing with me and DK. Like everyone was like, "Oh, Jaffa and DK got beef," and because he was rapping this one thing, he was like, "Blah blah blah," and DJ Jaffa on the cut or something like that, and sort of pointed, and I was like changing the record over or something. I didn't scratch, and everyone was like, "Oh my god, Jaffa didn't scratch the DK. What's going on? They got beef." I was like, it ain't really that deep.
So this happens at a time when secrecy is alive, and hip hop DJing, by that time at least, was based on covering a label, so nobody didn't know what you had, and you know, didn't see the tricks you were doing. How true to your craft was that for you personally, coming up in this no biting allowed era? Yeah,
I saw it with the Wild Bunch a lot, because it's like when they came back from New York in 86, that was the first time I ever heard Eric B as president, and they covered the label so no one could see what it was, and like no one knew what. This is when it was on Zakia Records, it's like small independent label, and it just, that tune just blew my mind, and it's my favorite hip hop record of all time to this day. You know, love it. But yeah, I saw it then, and they used to do it with a lot of their records. They like, I remember seeing, I saw something, and it was like, I think it was some old school DJs, and they were saying, yeah, we'd scrub the label off. So they'd put it in soapy water and scrub the label off, and then they'd like they'd write a little code on it so they knew what it was. But the Wild Bunch never did that. They just had like little cardboard discs which they'd stick over the label so no one could see what they were. And so I saw all of that, and I thought, yeah, that's the way to do it, you know, so no one can bite your stuff, like, you know. So, but I did it on, you know, my digging game wasn't that deep back then. So it was like, I had like 2 copies of a James Brown compilation, which I bought in HMV. And I thought, yeah, no one's going to see what I'm playing. I'm going to cover the labels and all this sort of thing. And it was just like, anyone could have walked into HMV and bought it. They had loads of them there, you know. But I just wanted to be part of that sort of culture, you know. And then when time went on, when my digging game did get a bit deeper, I didn't really care then. I was like spreading the news. Do you know what I mean? It was like, yeah, it's this record, whatever. I don't care, man. It's like spread the news. But I, you know, I've got friends now who are still deep into that. It's like, I was like, oh, what's that tune? Oh, I can't tell you. It's like, what?
Well, what you did was you started to lean into your own authenticity and started, you know, developing yourself as a DJ. You're already developing, and you mentioned earlier you're cutting your teeth in this era, pre-Google, pre-YouTube, everything's trial and error. You navigated a style and craft completely independent of any tutorials. What is it that sticks out about those moments that still has a lasting value today?
I think it's just everyone was learning. There was no, like you said, there was no tutorials, anything like that, but everyone was learning off each other. There's a sense of community. Even though, you know, we like with the B-boy stuff, we battle each other. We battle like a battle of DBSD MCs, a battle Ethos, or whatever, you know, Street Snakes, like all these crews around, we battle each other. But then we'd go and have a wimpy together or something, like, you know, there was no beef. It was just like, we were all sort of like, you know, it was like, you know, when we're battling, it's like, oh yeah, I want to kill your kids, you know, sort of thing, that sort of attitude. But then it's just like, yeah, we're best mates afterwards again, like, and everything. But we were all cutting our teeth in this culture. It was just, it was just all new. That's the thing about it. It was all new. It's like, and we weren't born into it. it didn't exist when we were born. Do you know what I mean? It's like now there's, it's like my kids and stuff. They're born into it. They're born into walking into the spare room and seeing turntables and records and stuff. So it's like this, and turning on whatever TV programs on and their favorite rappers on there and stuff like that. So they know it's just they're just born into this culture. Whereas with us, we weren't born into it, and we were just learning and cutting our teeth and just sort of like almost mimicking.
Right.
But then finding our own identity within that mimicking. If you get what I mean? It's just sort of like, well, like the thing with the cover and the records. It's like I saw it, so I thought, well, that's what I've got to do. So I did it. But then I come into my own after that. I'm thinking, well, why should I do that? Why not spread the knowledge? That was my way of thinking. Whereas there's other people who still think, no, people can't have that tune or whatever. But I've always been someone who will, I don't know, I spread my knowledge. I'll if people want to know something, I'll tell them. You get the basics out the way, like you said, the imitation and stuff like that. You get all the basics, all the basics, and then that's when you do come into your own, and you start sort of like, you might find there's a scratchy here, and then you think, right, well, how do I build on that? How can I make that different? How can I change it up to make it my own? And like just through doing DJ sets and stuff, different transitions and stuff like that, wordplay and stuff, which just comes into things with DJing now. It's like, how can I find my own transitions that I can use in DJ sets, and so it is you do innovate later on, but it's I think it's the same. It's the same with just it's human nature. It's like babies when they're born, they'll imitate what the parents are doing. It's like just sort of like wiggling fingers, and then the baby will wiggle their fingers and stuff. But then later on, the baby will think, well, I can wiggle my fingers, but I can also clench up a fist, and I can do this and I can do that. So they just sort of like bring it their own sort of like I don't know, they put their own spin on things. And it's the same with anything. It's the same with rappers. It's the same with DJs, graffiti artists, B-boys, anything like that. You look at the B-boys now compared to the B-boys in the 80s, and you'd think that the B-boys in the 80s didn't know what they were doing. And you look at the ones now, and it's just like, some of the tricks, some of the moves they're doing, it's just incredible. But that's them taking the foundational steps and then put their own spin on it, and then the next generation puts their own spin on it, their own spin on it, and it just keeps on progressing up and up and up and up.
What was it that was the most important part of your routine back then?
I'll tell you my day as well, though, because I used to get up in the morning, and I used to buy records from Spin-Off Records as well as like record shopping, because like as soon as I found out about mail order, I was in heaven. And I found it, I think it was the back of a magazine or something like that. It had it was Spin-Off Records, and it had like a list of some of the tunes they had there. And I was just like, do you know what? I had to phone this place up. So I phoned them up, and they were like, oh yeah, we got this. And my mother used to pay with her bank account or whatever, and I'd pay her then with my wages and whatever. So I'd wake up, and there'd be a delivery from Spin-Off Records. And then I'd wake the rest of the house up, have an argument with my mother because I've woken everyone up. But yeah, that was it. It was just like, I'd literally just get up. My turntables were right next to my bed. I'd get up, have my delivery, stick my 2 copies. I remember like when I got a delivery of Bring the Noise, I bought Bring the Noise on import. And this was like, it was when it was first out on 12-inch, but it was there was a film called Less Than Zero, and it was featured on a film called Less Than Zero. And the 12-inch that came out, there was Bring the Noise on one side, and on the other side, I think it was like the Black Flames or something. No, it wasn't the Black Flames. It was something like, it was like an R&B group. Okay. At a 12, which was on the Less Than Zero sound. But I bought that. That's my copy of Bring the Noise, is that one. And I just, my mother had enough of hearing bass back and forth. Like, bass. It's like, so yeah, that was, but that was the same, even if I didn't have records delivered, I'd still get up and go on my turntables. I'd literally I was like somewhere on Beat Street. I'd just fall out of bed and have my headphones on and put records on and start cutting. But then, in my sets, back then, it was just, I think it's just still the same sort of thing. It's like, I say the same sort of thing. It's like now I love playing classics. Obviously nostalgia is a hell of a drug. So I love playing classics. Back then, the classics were new records. So I think the only thing that's changed is where I love to play new stuff back then, because it was, it was all new, so it was new. But then it's like I'll still play, like I played when I played Support KRS-One recently. I played Nobody Beats the Biz, and I played Raw and stuff like that. So these are all the classic tunes that I was playing back then, but they were new back then. I've still got that, obviously I've still got that sort of like passion for new music. Hence my radio show, which is 100% new tunes every other week. It's all underground music, a lot of Welsh hip hop I'm playing. So I've still got that passion. But then I think my biggest passion is playing classics and like in every genre is like classic hip hop, classic funk, classic disco, classic soul, classic reggae, classic house, all of that. So I think I've got like a massive passion for classics, and like I said, nostalgia is just like off the charts.
There's a cultural currency in those records, isn't there? Yeah.
Oh, definitely. So I think that was my thing back then. It was just like the new music because it was all new. So that was my sort of like thing with a DJ set, trying sort of. And I remember playing in my local youth club, and I played it's a boogie tune, but called Keep On. I can't remember who it's by now. But I remember playing it, and I loved the fact that no one knew what it was. People were dancing to it because it was dope as hell. But they were looking up, and it was like my friend Yvette, who used to live in my same street as me. And she's like, "Who's this?" I was like, "I'm not telling you." Just winding her up and stuff. Just like, yeah. I showed her later, but it was just like, but I was just buzzed off the fact that people were dancing. But you could see it. They were like, "I've never heard this before." But it's funny.
Powerful.
Yeah.
So your mum's angry about this music being played. You can hear it between the walls. There's more than a handful of turning points, of course, where everything starts to change for your routine and your trajectory. Let's start with you moving to London and cutting a demo for Jive Records. How did moving to London and working with Jive come about?
Right. Well, we did a gig in, like, when we were Hard Rock Concepts. We sort of whittled it down to, we had like the graffiti side of it, we had the music side of it.
Okay.
So we got offered a gig in the Ritzy nightclub, which used to be in Queen Street. It was like massive nightclub. But on a Monday night, they had a funk and soul night, and they used to have PAs there all the time. There was like, there was a soul singer called Haywood, Oliver Cheatham. They've, loads of people played there, done PAs and stuff. We got offered to do a PA there. And it was literally like one of those massive old school DJ booths with all the records in there and like the lighting guy next to you and stuff like that. But then opposite was the stage right across the dance floor. So I set up over there, and it was like Eric was rapping, DK was rapping, 4D come on and raps. And I think that was about it. It was just the three of them.
What sort of year is this?
It's got to be around about 87. But yeah, and we did that, and then so late 87 or early 88. We did that, and then that was it. Everyone was just buzzing, and we were like, "Oh yeah, we're gonna be stars and all this." It's like, it's our local nightclub, and just it ain't that deep, But then Eric was like adamant. He was just like, "Yeah, I'm going to do something. I'm going to do something." And then he said, I'm going to go to London. I was like, okay, cool. I knew he had family up there and everything. I didn't think much of it, you know. And then time went by. I had a phone call off him at my mother's house. Said, Jaff, I got us a manager. We're going to cut a demo and we're going to get a record deal and all this. I was like, okay. He said, yeah, come to London. I was like, what now? He's like, yeah, come to London. I got somewhere for you to live. You know, we can chill, go do the demo, everything. He was like, really excited. And I was like, okay. So my mother was used to me just jetting out, you know. So it was like, Mum, I'm going to London. Yeah, okay, whatever, you know. So packed a bag, went to London that afternoon. We stayed in the manager's house in Kensington. This guy called Alfred Giacuno. He used to manage Eric's brother because Eric's brother was a boxer, and he said he wanted to get into managing a music group, and like rap was the hippest thing at the time. You know, it was like, oh right, okay. And Eric's brother said to him, he said, "Oh look, my brother's a rapper. He's really good." Blah blah blah. So we stayed there. He booked us into a studio in New Cross, and we wanted to record a demo, so we went in there thinking the engineers would know what to do. Sure. They didn't have a clue what to do. We did not really know what to do apart from what we knew to do off turntables and stuff. So it was like, right, they had a drum machine there. I think they might have had a sampler, but they didn't know how to use it. They never used it. So we programmed the drum beat. And then I had to fling the sample in. So it was literally like, I fling it in for like 4 bars and bring it out, wait 4 bars, put it back in for 4 bars, bring it out, 4 bars out, 4 bars out, and did that for the whole tune. And then we go back, and then the 4 bars I left out, I'd fill that in again.
Wow.
So, and I had to be, you know, pretty hot with the mixing of it, like, you know, it had to be tight. So that was the hardest thing. Is like sometimes I throw it in, and it's like the decks I was using were my first decks, which weren't the best, to be honest. They were like these JVC. They were direct drive, but the torque on the 1200s, it's like when you lift your hand up and it'll just go boom, straight. With these ones, it's sort of you lift your hand up, it goes and it sort of breaks up a bit. So I had to sort of like push it forward a little bit to get it to go in. But sometimes I'd push it a little bit too much or not too much, not enough. And so I had to go back and record it and stuff like that. But we did that. Then there was a reggae sample we used in the demo as well. So I had to cut that in as well. It's a record, I think Eric borrowed it off his brother or something like that. But I cut that in. And then there was the scratching over the top. And then the lyrics and stuff. And it was, what was the sample? Oh, it's Ashley's Roach Clip by Chuck on the Soul Searchers. That was the sample we used. Okay. And yeah, we did that demo, and Alfred shopped it around, and he took it to Jive Records, and they were looking for, because we had the reggae sample in it, they were they were looking for hip hop reggae acts. Like, we didn't class ourselves as a hip hop reggae act. We were just a hip hop group, but just happened to use a reggae sample. Right. But because the reggae sample was in there, they were like, yeah, it's perfect. We'll sign them to go on this compilation called Def Reggae. Like, amazing. Alfred was God back then. It was like, oh my God, you got us a contract with Jive Records. It's like looking at all my records, like KRS-One, this and that. It was like Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince, Steady B, all these artists I loved. They're all on Jive Records. I was like, oh my God, it was just amazing. So yeah, we went into the studio, did 2 tracks. It was Ease Off and Special Request. And they both went on this compilation album. And it was like, there was the other people who were on there. It was like us, Family Quest. And I can't remember the other ones, to be honest. But there was one of the guys. There was one of the guys in one of the groups, and he went on to produce the She-Rockers, and he went on to produce the She-Rockers and a few other people. I can't remember his name. I think it's Roddy something. But anyway, there was that compilation album. And then the one of the tracks off the We Recorded went on to be on the Word 4 compilation, which was the Word compilations were like these massive hip hop compilations that Jive put out. So they were like, you know, I mean, like the first one had like Miss Melody on it and like Jazz Jeff and Fresh Print, people like that. And then but Word 4 was the last one they did. And it was a double album. And we were the only ones off the Def Reggae compilation that got picked up to go on that album, which was amazing.
Incredible.
Yeah. And I think it was us, We Pappers put a different track on there. And then there was the She Rockers. I think it was us, us We Pappers and She Rockers were the only UK artists on the album. I could be wrong. There might be another one, but I'm sure that was the only three. And then there was like, it was Tribe Called Quest's first outing was on there. Definition of a Fool, that was on there. There was like, I think Schoolie D was on there, Jazz Jeff and the Fresh Prince, Skinny Boys, you know, all the big acts at the time, you know, BDP. And and there's little Otis from Cardiff on there as well. And it was just like, wow. And all of this, it was so surreal.
Surreal,
Yeah, because there was this, we were two kids basically, because I was like 19, Eric was 17. And we're just two kids from Cardiff, and we'd gone to this magical place in hip hop, you know. It's just like, wow.
Let's talk about this magical place in terms of process. You talked about, you know, the demos not actually being made with a sampler. How do you think those sessions elevated your chemistry and style for those two songs after?
I think it's because we knew we didn't need the technology to do what we did. Mm-hmm. It's the same. I remember listening to a podcast and they were saying about the Jungle Brothers' first album, and I just always thought that they use samplers and stuff, but it's the same thing. It was like Sammy B used his turntables and threw the breaks in the same way, and I sort of validated us to a certain extent.
Right.
They're like, oh, we were doing the right thing, you know. It's like, but then when we got in the studio, it was just like, well, we know what we're doing, but we've got all this technology now, and it was like on which one is it? I think it's Ease Off. If you listen on headphones, like the hi-hat sort of going round in a circle and stuff in the headphones, and it was stuff like that. It was like all these little studio tricks and stuff. It was like, oh my god, it's amazing. But at the end of the day, it was literally just a sample, a drum beat, a scratch, and a lyric. Hip hop. That was it.
I got to the border yesterday and they said it was okay for me to come through, cause your city needs new style from a man who can rock a jam. Damn, all I need is Jaffa cause he both can. And I shake party butts on the scene. I mean, it's mean. You ever seen a man who make a suckers come clean? Green is an alien, E.T. was a monster. Don't understand what I'm saying? Well then I've lost you. Already lost you, must be an imposter. Don't understand what I'm saying? It's gonna cost you. When you going to realize I am the cool Jamaican? When you make the money, all the bitches they stop faking. Really makes me mad. They say they love you more and more, but if that's the case, they were the bitches before. 4 times I've been asking, I rap about something interesting. Yeah, even when my brain is resting, I'm testing myself to the limit of intelligence, my IQ. I'm from the Duce crew. You have to sit down or dance if you can sit from that position.
Do you think that people understand the full capacity of those records today?
No, not at all. It's the same with a lot of like old school tracks. They just get passed by and until someone actually, you know, looks at them and sort of pulls them apart. Really, they don't understand the sort of groundbreaking sound that they were. You know, it's like we were using like "Don't Tell It" as a sample and stuff like that, and it's to this day it holds up against other sort of like records from that time. And like Eric's lyrical style and everything as well. Granted, he had a little bit of an American twang, but a lot of people did back then, you know. But it's just his whole style. I remember like when because we were living with Alfred for a bit, and then we ended up coming back to Cardiff for a bit, and then we went back up, and we were living with Eric's sister. And we both went out to get a job, but like I had a job, and then I came back, and Eric was still looking. And I remember I'd walk in the flat, and you'd sort of walk up the stairs, and the top of the first set of stairs, you look, and it's the living room. And I came in, all I hear was this music playing. I was like, oh, Eric's home. He's just chilling, listening to music. No, he wasn't listening to music. I walked in the living room. He was doing a whole stage show. He was practicing his craft. He was just like, there was me. I'm knackered, come all the way from Peckham, because I used to work in a discount warehouse in Peckham. Come all the way from Peckham to Lewisham. And walked into the flat, just like, and Eric's there stomping back and forth on the one side of the room, and the crowd was a settee on the other side of the room. And he was practicing his stage show. Amazing. You know, and it just showed. And I said, how long have you been doing that? He said, I don't know, hours. He's just like, he was just practicing everything, every little. I remember when we went to record the tracks, it's like, there's one bit in it, and he just goes, or something like that. This like little sort of noise. We recorded that about 4 times because he just like, no, it's not right. It's not right. So, you know, he put in a lot of work, and it shows, you know, it's where he, you know, where he eventually ended up, you know. But I remember we used to, like in Sybil, his sister's flat, we used to, like every Friday night, we listened to the Capital Rap show. And we get our little bottles of Thunderbird with a straw in it, and just get wasted on a bottle of Thunderbird, listening to the rap show and stuff. It was just like
good times. But
it was like we were there. We were there for hip hop, and you know, we were listening to our competition basically. That was it, you know.
Yo, just the Duce is in effectiveness. Yeah. This is a special request to the hip-hop posse. He's DJ Jaffa, and my name is Cool E1. Special request to the hip-hop posse. He's DJ Jaffa, and my name is Cool E. And it's a request to the hip-hop posse that I see in town. You don't know any brothers, boy, then shooting down. Everybody knows the score, that's why we never fuss. And it's like, well, mess with my posse, you get crushed like crust. We like to go to the places such as Lloyd's and Chicago. I like to think the women wanna go wherever I go. If they don't, I can live with it. Cause at the end of the night, I got a place where they can sit down while I take command. Here's a tribute to the posse that I know firsthand. Time has come to meet the P-O-S-S-N-E. The boys I hang with, I'm Eric, I want you to see. This is a special request to the hip-hop posse. He's DJ Jaffa, and my name is Cool E-Guan. Special request to the hip-hop posse. He's DJ Jaffa, and my name is Cool E. Go! What's the name of this crew, Jaffa? Is that so? Yeah, that's right. If you want to know what I am talking about, then listen close. You come to this crew because we rock the most.
Can you speak to how living in London prepares you to commit yourself to this level of excellence that we're talking about? How does living in London prepare you for those years to follow?
Yeah, it was just like when we used to go to, because it was a while before we actually knew we could cut demos in Battery Studios. Because we got, you know, we were just like, oh, we've done the tracks and that's it. You know, we just wait for the album to come out and maybe we do the odd gig here and there. But apparently, you know, because we were signed to Jive, we were allowed to use the writing rooms and cut demos and stuff. We didn't know for a while, but when we did know, we got in there and it was just like, yeah, we cut demos with like Master Mix, who did like stuff with Blade, and then I think he did stuff with what's his name? Not Overload X. I can't remember, but there's a few other artists he's done stuff with and all that. But and he was like down with Hard Noise and stuff later on. And then it was DJ Crypt as well, he's done like remixes for LL Cool J and stuff like that. So he did demos for us as well. But then we started hanging around with like Wee Pappers and stuff like that. And it's like, they'd look at us like, you're from Wales? And we're like, yeah. Like, didn't even know there's black people in Wales, let alone rap and stuff. You know, it was just like this weird sort of like, so we felt like we got to prove ourselves. And it's just like, and we did, you know, they accepted us totally. It was like, yeah, you're dope. So it was like, we became really good friends with the Wheat Pappers, and we'd go to like Tim's flat in Akton and stuff. No, we're not Akton. Was it Hammersmith? And like chill, listen to music. It was just that whole sort of like community thing again. But yeah, it definitely elevated us, and it was just like we felt like, to a certain extent, we felt like we were part of that community. That sort of London hip hop community. It's like Eric became good friends with like some of the girls from the She Rockers and stuff, and it was just like we'd just go and hang out at Battery Studios. We'd sit. I remember sitting there when we were in the rec room, and it was like what's his name? D-Nice came in.
Wow.
D-Nice was just sat there. I was like looking at him. I was like, I know him from somewhere. I can't think where I know him from. And he was sat there, real quiet, but he had like a Stax Records 7-inch in his hand. And I was like, I know him from somewhere. And then he went. I was like, oh my God, that's Boogie Down Products. That's D-Nice. It's D-Nice.
My name is D-Nice. D-Nice. My name is D-Nice. D-Nice. My name is D-Nice.
And then there was another time when Hijack came in to get signed to Jive, and biggest mistake they ever made was not signing them. I don't know what happened, but they turned around and said no basically to them. But they were just chilling in the rec room. I was there just chilling, watching MTV, and they were there just playing pool and stuff, waiting to go in to this meeting. And it's just like there was all these people. There was like another guy who is a producer. I can't remember his name now, but he had worked with like EPMD back in the day, and he was like from the States and stuff. He was like became quite friendly with Eric. And then Danny D as well, like Dancing Danny D, who was just like this mega star, and megastar for us, he was like sort of like D-Mob and all that sort of thing. And he became quite good friends with us. We'd play pool and stuff like that, and then he was producing a track for We Pappers. And Eric, and they said, oh, no, can Eric write it? So Eric ended up writing this track called, what's it called? A Group of MCs. And he wrote it, he put my name in it, but Just The Duce, which is our crew. And that was our little thing, our foray into sort of being mentioned, in this rap record and stuff. It was just like, oh wow, it was great. But yeah, that was it. It was just like, and then I remember first time I saw KRS-One was when I was living up there in like 88, and like bumped into the Demon Boys, in the and then we bumped into like We Pappers DJ, who was supposed to be at rehearsals but decided to come to KRS-One, and they weren't too happy about it, but whatever. It was just some mad thing. It was like one of the guys who used to hang around with Master Mix when we were in the studio, we were talking and all that, and he was like, oh, where you living? I said, oh, Lewisham. He said, oh, I live in Lewisham. Where to? I said, oh, I live in Murillo Road, just off Lee High Road. Seriously, what number? I said 23. Oh shit, I live opposite you.
Unbelievable.
It was just like, what? It's just like this mad community, like. But yeah, it was dope, man. I loved living up there. But then all things got to come to an end, and our contract ran out, and it was just like, like Eric stayed up there because he had family up there for one, and Trenton Harrison, who was the Wheat Pappers manager, he got a job being the head of Rush Europe, which was obviously Russell Simmons and all that in the States, Rush Management. Right. But they did a Rush Europe, and part of Rush Europe was Technotronic was signed to Rush Europe. And this is when it was only Yakid K. And then they needed a male MC to sort of complement Yakid K. And because we were friends with Trent and we were friends with Pappers, they sort of like approached Eric, and Eric was like, yeah. And I was going back to Cardiff. I was, we had basically end the contract, end of the whole thing, basically, So it was like, right. So that was Eric's next step. He was staying up there anyway, and he went on, which is, he good to him. It's like a lot of people said to me, oh, I knew you're a bit pissed off, that Eric's gone to. I was like, no, good for him, man. It's just like,
why would you be?
He's my brother, man. He's like,
of course,
let him go on.
So the deal ends up ending quicker than the experience felt like it lasted for you. You're back in Cardiff. What kind of role did Grassroots play in reinventing yourself?
Well, basically, I come back to Cardiff unemployed. So back then it was like YTS and the ET scheme and all stuff like that. So I ended up going to Grassroots. There was a guy, he used to work in Grassroots, Paul Durant. And, really good producer and stuff and engineer and all. But he started out in Grassroots, and he was the one who started out. I don't know if it was actually him, but he was the one who got all the equipment from the funding that they put in to get the equipment to start off the studio in Grassroots. And he asked me to come and help, work there on an ET scheme. So it's like, well, they used to call it extra tenor, because that's basically what it was. It was like an extra tenor on top of your bill or something. So I started working there and helped build the studio there. Obviously, I say help build a studio. You think, oh, Jaffa was like this big. I was like, no, I was literally like passing a screwdriver. Stuff, I was just there, So it's like, but I learned bits and pieces as I was going along there and stuff. And they said, oh, when it's up and running, you can bring people down, record whatever. So the first thing I did was I was really into like Massive Attack and like sort of like Smith and Mighty, that type of sounds. But the early, it was like when the Wild Bunch put out like Friends and Countrymen and The Look of Love and stuff like that. So it was like very sort of like hip hop based, but soul music.
Got it.
So it's samples like The Look of Love by the Wild Bunch is just basically like this mad drum beat, cutting samples in and stuff like that. I was into all of that, the whole like Smith and Mighty sounds. So I wanted to do something like that. So I put this track together with just samples. I think I sampled like, I don't know, like Peter Piper and stuff like that. It's all these old hip hop samples and whatever. So and then put this drum beat behind it, put some cuts on it and stuff. And I wanted like a singer, and I knew there was Sian Evans, who's the singer for Kosheen. Like, she used to go to my school, so I knew her from like, she was like a couple of years younger than me. She was in my brother's year. So it was like, I knew her, and I said to her, I said, oh, can you come and sing? And I was just like, yeah, okay. And I didn't know anything about the musicality or anything like that, about it. I was like strictly like, beats and bars, all that sort of thing. So, but one of the guys who used to work in the studio, he was a keyboard player. He said, oh, I can put like a keyboard pad on it. I was like, what's a keyboard pad? And he was like, I'll just put some sort of notes on to sort of complement it and then, elevate the sound and all that. I was like, yeah, cool, whatever. Just stick it on there. Yeah, that would be great. So Chang came along and done this thing, and like thinking about it now, it's like, I haven't heard that for years. I had it on cassette and it's gone, unfortunately. But thinking about how it sounded in my head, it's complete trash compared to what I can do now. But it was, I thought it was the dopest thing ever when I first did it. I was just like, yeah, this is amazing. This is just like, I was listening to it over and over and over. It was just like, yeah, this is on par with anything Bristol's doing, and their sound and stuff.
You believed in it?
Yeah, totally. But yeah, but like I said, now it's like, I don't know about that. But then, yeah, and I got like 40 came in the studio and stuff. I remember doing a track with 40, and I like sampled like a Peaches and Herb record and stuff. And, and then there's like Bubba come down and a few others. But I think they got a bit pissed off with me in the studio. They got a bit like, oh, we don't want you bringing people down here anymore. I had a flat down row, so I had the bottom floor. 40 had the middle floor, and then there's the other guy, Liam Minikin. He had at the top floor. So it was like it was basically like a hip hop flat. It was just like, it was we had like parties downstairs. I had my deck set up. I had a flat downstairs, and it was literally it was a real good flat, to be honest, because I had like a front room, which was my bedroom. I had a middle room, which I had just as a spare room, and then I had the living room, which was where I had the decks, and all I had was a settee and turntables in it, but it was huge. It was like a massive living room. Nice. And then I was a small kitchen and a small bathroom and stuff. But that was the time where it was like a hub. So it was like I'd have 4D coming down. We'd mess around, plug a microphone in, I'd cut beats, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And then it was like Paul B, who was he was a kid at the time of the grassroots jams. And he remembered, he's told me before, he was sort of, him and his mate Lee Clark was just like posted up against the wall and just sort of like loving, what's going on and stuff, loving the vibe and everything. Absorbing everything. But just like, they were just sort of like little kids, basically, just like, oh my God, what's this thing? And then, I remember meeting Paul when I came down from London to visit, and I visited 4D, and he was sort of like, he was in 4D's flat, and 4D had decks there, and he was like cutting on it, and he was like real nervous. He was like cutting in front of DJ Jaffa sort of thing and everything. But that was the first time I seen him cut, and I was like, oh, he's dope, And then years later, he started coming down my flat in Roath, and I had my settee, but in most places it would be like a TV, then settee would be facing the TV. In my flat, I had no TV, and there was a settee was facing the turntables. There was Paul would come down and practice. Then it was Andrew Harford, who's a graffiti artist now called Hoax. He used to come down with Paul as well and practice. And we'd have, every now and again, we'd have like a break to the beat competition. Because I remember when I was in London, Westwood used to have like a break to the beat competition every Friday on the Capital Rap show. You had to guess what the break was. It was on this record and stuff like that. So I just sort of have that. And like Paul says to this day, it was like he was going to school. He loved it. It was just like, it was just like this older sort of statesman, if you want.
This really was a hub back then. It really was a hub, and there was a spirit of innocence with everybody that was participating and hanging out with yourself.
Yeah, it was like that was the thing. It was like everyone used to come down, and then later on, then it was like Bubba would come down. He used to go to the grassroots jams. He'd come down with some of his boys, and it was literally like I'd started cutting hair back then as well. So they come down, I get their heads shaped up and stuff, and listening to hip hop. There'd be someone on the decks, there'd be someone rhyming. It was just like a little hip hop hub. And then I'd have like every now and I say every now and again, I think I had one, and then I've said that's it. I had a party in there, and there used to be a guy who used to sell flowers around town. He had like Jerry Curls and a tuxedo on, and he sold flowers to the clubs and stuff in the 80s and 90s really. He ended up in my living room. It was like, because Paul Lyons used to DJ in Lloyd's, he announced over the microphone that I was having a party, and it seemed like the entirety of town just ended up in my flat. But it was mad though. It was like everyone was just jamming. I was playing, I had like 2 copies of Sion's Pete Rock, not Pete Rock. What's the name? Not CL Smooth. What was it called? Super Lover Cian Casanova Rudd. That's it. Their album. It was like Do the James. That was the tune of the night. It was like everyone just jamming to that and stuff. It was just like mad parties and stuff. But yeah, it was, like you said, it was a hub. And and then and then later on, then I moved to St. Mellons. And that's when the Underdogs was formed. It was like 40's sister. They were sort of the genesis to it. And then I was on board. And that's when Johnny B, Nathan the Watcher, Sparky, all these people sort of came out of that.
What's happening? It's Johnny B, Cardiff's longtime MC. Memories of collaborating with Jaffa. These are proud memories. Back in 1992, I recorded a few live jams on cassette tape in Jaffa's bedroom, just 2 turntables and a mic. one of the beats Jaffa had produced, which I included on my mixtape later that year. And this particular track was special to me, as it was co-produced by Cardiff legend Justin Stride, which I found out later was my brother Gareth, aka Jet from the Street Snakes, best mate in school. And years later, Jaffa found out Justin was his blood brother, which is a whole nother story. But moving into 2023, I'm very proud to say Jaffa is now a producer and DJ in our new group Zenith, alongside Cardiff legend Dregs and longtime collaborator C Live. And we're going to be releasing new music soon on UK label Bad Picasso Records. Watch out, exciting times ahead.
It was basically kids on the estate with nothing to do, and gave them something to do, gave them an interest, like whether it was dance, rap, DJing, and then later on beat making, and I like 40 knows, but it's like, I actually rapped for a bit because of that project. Yeah, it's basically that I was there, and one of the kids, he was trying to rap on beat, but he couldn't rap on beat properly. And so I was sort of banging. I was like, rap on beat like this, And then I said to him, and he was like, oh, it's hard. I said, well, I'll do it then. I can't rap. I'll try it. And then I did it, and I enjoyed it for a bit, like we used to have little ciphers in the back room of 40 Sisters' house and stuff. And it was like, I could join in then, it's like, oh, I can rap now. Okay. But I think I recorded like 2 or 3 tracks or whatever. And then it was just like, it just fizzled out. Then I just didn't, I'm not a rapper at all.
So you rapping back then wasn't to validate yourself. It was to validate this person who was struggling to find the rhythm.
Yeah, 100%. It was, no, I'd never had any aspiration to be a rapper at all. And I saw someone struggling, and I thought, well, if I can put myself forward, because they knew I didn't rap. They knew I couldn't rap, So if I put myself forward and say, look, I'm going to try it, so you come along with me on this journey, and then I help them out, basically. But it was literally like a limited edition on cassette only. It was just like dope. But yeah, we recorded it. I think we recorded it in Hawaiian. Hawaiian had a studio, and recorded it up there. And it was just like, there was 2 instrumental tracks on there, because by this time we had got like funding and got studio equipment. So we had like it was literally just an Atari computer with Cubase on it and a Akai 950. And I basically threw myself into that. I was making beats for everyone. It's beats for the dancers. I made like a jungle track using all like samples. When jungle first sort of came in, it was like, oh, the dancers want to dance to a jungle track, so I made this jungle track with all like hip hop samples and stuff. Then it was like hip hop instrumentals, just tracks for different groups. We had like there was two kids. They called themselves Verbal Assault, so I made a couple of tracks for them. There was Gareth, who was 40 Sisters or 40's nephew. He was a solo artist, made tracks for him, made tracks for his niece. Some of the other kids, is like, and then it was like Nathan the Watcher, who went on to be an Urban Poets later. He was just a kid who used to ride up and down on his bike. Just knew him from the area, and he sort of like said, oh, I can rap. I was like, oh, okay. I said, oh, well, come in, join us. Like, so he came in, and yes, he could rap. He sounded like Q-Tip. It was just like, wow, this guy's dope. Like, so he just became one of the main sort of MCs. There was like Evil C, who was now in Zenith, which is just about to come out on Bad Picasso. Like, he was an underdog. Johnny B was an underdog, who's now in Zenith as well. Then it was Sparky, who went on to be in Green Giants. And then obviously 40. All these people, they all started out in this youth project, basically.
I'm curious as to what happens when you transition to being a producer. Can you speak to any challenges pivoting between his life of a DJ and life as a producer back then? What were the challenges?
Yeah. For me, I find it hard to concentrate on one thing. I got to throw myself 100% into one thing. So I say about 95% into one thing. So it's like, if I'm producing, I'm 95% a producer, but still 5% a DJ.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? And then when I'm DJing, I'm 95% a DJ, but 5% producers. I find it hard to sort of like constant, you know, cause like I really want to throw myself into what I'm doing. So I really find it hard to do that. I always have. It's just one of those things. With the underdogs, it was like trying to work out shows, produce. I was working a day job as well and DJing. That was really hard. So it turned out that any spare minute I had, I was just throw myself into a sampler. And then because I was learning as well, it wasn't like, oh, I knew how to do this. So I had to learn the sampler. I've never worked on a 950 before, so I had to work it all out. But yeah, back then it was very hard to sort of like cut myself up into little sections. I found things overlapping a lot, and you know, but yeah, it worked out, you know. And it was hard, and it's hard. I think it's harder for me because I can't I need to throw myself, and you know, as much as I could into one thing. But as soon as I got a workflow going, which I, you know, there was like beat after beat after beat after beat, and it worked out how it was like all the micro choppings and stuff like that because of the sample time, and just worked out all of that. And you know, instead of if you could listen to the first beats I made, it was like literally like full loops. And then I worked out how to chop to cut down sample time. And then you can reprogram beats. And then I worked out micro chopping of samples. So it'd be like a little tiny guitar lick and stuff like that. So it just worked out, you know. Some of the tracks later on were more intricate because I had more time because I was micro chopping and stuff. So it was like, yeah, but it was all a learning curve.
There was a moment for you in time where you found a lot of creativity in the wah-wah pedal.
Yes, yeah, that was back when we were in Connaught Road in Roth. There was I don't even know how it came about, but I had this pedal, this really good sort of guitar pedal, but it had like I think it's like a 1 or 2 second sample time on it. It's basically to loop like guitar riffs or whatever, stuff like that. So I started like looping like breaks and just like taking different sections and not your usual section and different sections, and you're thinking, oh, well, I could use that. But then obviously doing all of that sort of stuck with me. And then some of those samples which I did back then, I remembered them and then implemented them when I had proper equipment. So that was, yeah, I suppose that was like the foundation of what I did later on, even though I'd had records out before then, but it was like my first sort of hands-on as a producer sort of thing. You know, that was like my first sort of foray into that. It was just like, yeah, I just loved it. You know, and I took the pedal up to the mixer and then just cut over it, and then, you know, I just love the creativity of it.
Who would have been some of those producers locally who were pushing you to explore sonics the way you were?
It was Chrissy Jenkins. I think I cite him as my sort of like, I could call him Chrissy the Big Push, to be honest, because he just basically pushed me to do everything. It's like went through my DJing. Like I said, I was a bit of an introvert. So when I started DJing in club, I would literally just do my set and just go home. I wouldn't talk to anyone, nothing. I was just like, oh, whatever. I just don't want to talk to anyone. But he was the one who sort of like turned around and he's like, look, talk to people. You know, the people want to speak to you. They like what you're doing and stuff. So I was doing that. But then production wise, he was like one of these people who sort of pushed me to sort of open my eyes a bit wider, and sample wise, like look at different music. And it's like, instead of like, going digging and then only buying records with a black guy with an afro on the front, it was just like, you go into the like psychedelic rock stuff and the Latin stuff and all of that. Listening to the music he was making, like he used to be in, I mean, he was like he used to work with James Taylor or something like that back in the day as a percussionist and stuff. But he was telling me stories about like he'd go to he went to a Def Jam plug party in London and stuff. It's like, which is like basically it was like a DJ battle. But then as soon as the DJ messed up or something, they'd unplug the decks, and then the next DJ would jump on or something. I thought that was just wild. I was like, what? But yeah, he sort of made me sort of open my eyes and expand my sort of musical taste a bit more than, it's, whereas like I've did demos for like Urban Poets where I sampled like a Todd Rundgren record and stuff, and it's just like, looking more into like psychedelic rock and that's the sounds you can get out of that. And then it was like stuff I did with Kids with Toys. I sampled a piano off the Blade Runner soundtrack and just totally micro chopped it. So it's just like I gave the record to someone I said, look, go through that record, find a sample. They couldn't find it because I just totally destroyed that sample, just micro chopping it and take, all over the place. So, but yeah, he just made me like to sort of look different places, not just sort of like I said, it's not just some black guy with an afro on the cover of the record. It's like some mad funk record. Just look different sort of genres and stuff as well. But yeah, he's the GOAT, man. He's such a dope producer, such a dope guy.
You mentioned Urban Poets. I want to talk about those guys and the formulation later on, of course, in this interview. But I do want to mention a group in which happens because of Nathan the Watcher. Before that, the Shawnees.
Yeah. Basically, it's like when we had the Underdogs going, we had the Shawnee. That was one sort of segment of it. We grouped up and it was like we made this. Well, it was 40 who started it basically, and it was called the Shawnees. I think the Shawnees is like something. It was like Welsh Warrior or something like. I can't remember, to be honest. 40 knows exactly what it is, but it's like, yeah, you told me. I was like, yeah, whatever. It's a dope name. So it's like
there is a science to it, though.
Yeah, there's a science to it, but
got it.
But yeah, we managed to. Well, I say we. They managed to get in contact with someone, or someone got in contact with them about their writing style and stuff. And this guy was a writer in Berlin, and he paid for them to go over to Berlin to do some sort of writing workshops with him or something. And then they came back and they were like, oh my God, Berlin's amazing. You need to come over, blah, 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 all this sort of thing. I was like, okay, dope. Yeah, I'll come over, And this guy arranged, he said, oh, I'd love to speak to you about your life and stuff like that. He said, all I ask is you sit down and I'll speak to you and you tell me about your life and stuff like that. And I'll pay for you to come over and put you up. And, I was like, dope, let's go. So, yeah, it was me, Sparky, Nathan, and 40, and we ended up going to Berlin. Stayed in this area in Berlin, which was run by, I think it was like the 36ers or something like that, and they were like a graffiti crew. With the younger ones were like a graffiti crew, and then the older ones were like drug dealers and like coke kingpins and stuff. Like, it was just a mad area. It was just crazy. It was like 36
straight out of a film
everywhere. But seriously, it was just like you go walk down the street and it'd be like a cafe, and it's like Don Corleone sitting on outside of his shooters on either side of him. It was like crazy shit. But yeah, and then we just went out and explored the city, and we met up with there was a crew over there called Chiba Garden, and we sort of linked up with them, and they sort of showed us around. We went to their studio, and then what was it? We went to the studio. We went to a club there called the Aku Club. And they got me to do a DJ set there. And it was literally like walking up to, like, say, Loudon Square down the docks, like the flats down there, like walking up to Loudon Square flats, going down to the basement. That was the club. And then the toilets were on like the first floor. It was some makeshift sort of thing. But that was like the number one hip hop club in Berlin at the time. And it was like graffiti all over the walls. There was like a little stage, which wasn't really a stage. It was like literally a step up. And the decks were on there, and there was like somewhere for someone to perform and stuff. But I had a record. It was a record by a Gemini the Gifted one, which was like the biggest tune in Berlin at the time, hip hop wise. And I had a remix of it, and I played the remix, and it just went off. And they were like, "Oh, amazing! Who killed it? Oh, Gemini the Gifted one, all this." They loved it. So wicked night in that place. And then, but we met this graffiti writer, and it's like, I can't even remember his name now, but he took us back to his flat. No, he wasn't a graffiti writer. So he was a rapper, but he worked with Chiba Garden. He wasn't part of Chiba Garden. I remember going back to his flat, and his girlfriend was a graffiti writer. And it was like, I remember there was two stacks of records. There's one on one side, one on the other side of the room, and one was his and one was hers. And they were all hip hop. It was like, and then she was showing me these. I was like, "Oh, I love this album." Blah, blah, blah. And then we stayed there for ages. We stayed overnight there, and I think it was something like about 1 a.m. She said, "Oh, I'm going now." I was like, "I thought you lived here." And he was like, "Yeah, I'm just going out on graffiti." She's going to bomb a train, it's like madness. It was just like, but the one thing I loved about Berlin as well, it was like the culture over there. It was like. They looked at UK artists the same way they looked at American artists. So we didn't even have a demo, but we were looked at as like, top artists or whatever.
What year is this?
Oh, geez.
97?
No, this is like 90 something. So this was probably around about 90. Oh, I know which year it was. This was 96. I know it was 96 because when I was over there, I spoke to my wife and we had a nice long conversation. And then right at the end, she dropped the bombshell saying she was pregnant.
What's the story behind you scratching for The Simpsons on the Yellow album in 98?
Oh, right. Okay. That was basically, I got roped into doing DJ duties for this group called Vibe Tribe, which DK, go way back, first rapper I ever spun for. But DK was sort of like, he was part of the group and he was the rapper. And then there was there was a singer, Mary something. She went on to do some like sort of poppy house tunes and like had a couple of top 40 hits later on. Lennis Esprit, he's the guy who engineered a lot of the Zenith stuff, which is coming out soon. There's another guy, Glenn, who is on percussion. And I can't. And then the main guy behind it all, the producer, and he was the drummer for the band as well, Greg Havers, who's like big producer, worked with like Manic Street Preachers, people like that. But this group was like a very sort of like, I think like sort of soul to soul ish, but a bit more mainstream sort of group. And they wanted a DJ, so it was like, yeah, okay. DK got in touch with me. I went down. Yeah, I'm on board. So so we did our thing there. We did a couple of showcases up in London for it. I think we did one for, well, we did one big one, and it was just like all these record labels invited and stuff like that. But it just didn't go anywhere. But off the back of that and other stuff that Greg had done, he got a production deal was it a production deal? I think it was a production deal or something like that. Whatever it was, with EMI. And with that came the opportunity of doing a track on the Simpsons album. So he produced this track called The 10 Commandments of Bart. Got DK to write the lyrics. And then there's a part in it where it's Bart something, and here comes some scratching or something like that. And he wanted me to cut there. It was like literally like a few seconds of cutting, and then the beat drops out and he goes, "Who did that?"
Twitching to this mucho bewitching hip-hop tune that I'm presently hatching. Hold on to your hats, man, cause here comes the scratching. Who did that?
And then that was it. Like, it's some, Simpson shit. So it's like, so I did that, just layered up a couple of tracks. And years later, because we did it, and then years later the album came out. I had a random text off him saying, "Oh, the album's out now," and it was just like, looked at it. It was like, I think like CNC Music Factory's on there. I mean, there's a track that Prince wrote or something like that is on there. There's like all these big artists are on there, and then there's again little old me. But the Simpsons have got their own like Wikipedia. And if you go on the Simpsons Wikipedia, it's like proper is like something like it's called it like the Simpsonpedia or something like that. It's some weird thing. But if you go on there and type in DJ Jaffa, I come up, and it's just like, it's awesome. I love the Simpsons. It's just like I'm on the Simpsons Wikipedia.
So you're now a part of Simpsons canon.
Yeah, 100%. This is very surreal, but yeah. So yeah, that's how that came about.
Take me into the process of contributing cuts for that song. There's creativity you're looking for in this space to scratch on tracks, and I wondered if you were able to address that.
It's the same as I do now. It's just like, it's literally I asked him what he wanted. He didn't really know what he wanted, to be honest. He just wanted scratching. So I just sort of like picked out a few different cuts, different samples which might complement each other, and layered it up. It was literally like just about 3 or 4 different. I think it was about three cuts, and I just made a scratch pattern, just overlaid it, then another scratch pattern, overlaid it, another scratch pattern. But yeah, it was, and I think he did a little bit of sort of like chopping, because he was very into like everything's got to be on the one and stuff like that. There's no sort of like fluidity and stuff like that. So if you listen to it, it's a little bit choppy, which I would have liked it a little bit more fluid, but it is what it is, It's like, but that's basically it. He just more or less left it to me what I wanted to do, but then he sort of like went back, and then, like I say, he sort of chopped it a little bit, but yeah, you just listen to the track and just sort of like go with it. It's like the way I do cuts now. It's like I prefer if someone comes to me with a concept, as I love like I did cuts on a track for Mighty Mouse's last album, and it was all about the Zodiac Killer. So I just went down a rabbit hole, because like technology, you can rip audio, and I use Serato, so I stick in my Serato and I can cut. So it's like I just went down a rabbit hole on YouTube looking for like Zodiac Killer documentaries and trailers for the film and stuff like that. And then like, because his name's Mighty Mouse, looking for Mighty Mouse cartoons and stuff, and I just love the creativity of that, where you can sort of like make these little sort of collages of cuts. It doesn't, it doesn't have to be like Mads going in, flaring and transforming and crabbing and all this, blah, 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 blah. I prefer listening to DJs be interesting.
There's a language within that.
Yeah, it's like these days, there's a lot of DJs who've got skills. There's loads of them. And a lot of them can crab, a lot of them can cut, a lot of them can flare. All these different styles and stuff like that. But it takes it to a different place when you got that creativity to sort of complement a track. Yeah. It's like I've had artists send me tracks over and say, "Oh, can you put cuts on this?" And I'd say no, because their track is full. There's no
space.
There's no space. It's like when I got more into production and I learned about frequencies and stuff. It's like you might put little sounds in here and there to sort of fill out frequencies, and then you'd pull stuff out because you're going to put a vocalist on there, so that vocalist will fill that frequency. So it's like if someone sends me a track, one, there might not be any space because their vocals are taking up all the space, and two, it's like the actual track might, the frequencies on the track, it just might not, it might be too full, and there might not be enough space for me to actually do anything. So it's like, but then I do like when like people send me like bare bones of tracks, because I can put my sort of stamp on it, and then they can build around me, which is great,
Does that happen more often than not?
To be honest, majority of the time I'm cool. I get sent the track, and the track's good. It's like it's either bare bones or they've left space for me to fill. It's very, very rare that I'll get a track sent to me. I have had tracks sent to me, but it is very rare that I'll get a track sent to me and it's just full. I think these days people realize more about like frequencies and stuff like that in the studio, and it's more often than not, it's good. Yeah, Tistion, they were groundbreaking. They were like, the first sort of Welsh language rap group, basically. And they were like the sort of CNN, the P of like Welsh language. So it was like sort of traveling up and down Wales with them was like amazing. But it was like when I first sort of got to them, it was like they wanted me to. They got in touch with a friend of a friend, as they do, and they wanted cuts put on one of their tracks. I was like, yeah, I'm up for that. So I just went down to the studio. I can't remember where. It was somewhere in, I think it was one of the studios was just on Albany Road or something like that. So went down there, put the cuts on. They loved what I was doing. And then next thing I know, I get a message off them saying, "Oh, is there any chance you could be our DJ?" And they were telling me about some gigs they got and stuff like that. I was like, yeah, okay, it's cool. It's like, I'm one of these people, I just sort of say yes and then figure out later on. So yeah, I said yes, and next thing I know, I was Tistion's DJ, and we did everything from, I remember doing like the back room of a pub in North Wales somewhere, to doing like one of the main stages at the Eisteddfods, doing like a Radio 1 gig in the Cold Exchange for John Peel, doing John Peel sessions. So yeah, we went all over the place with that. Is a crazy ride. But it was like, I don't understand Welsh at all. I can't speak it. I can't understand it. So for me, I just had to rely on sort of like, oh, well, it's a 16 bars and then there's an 8-bar chorus, right? I got cut there. Right. 16 bars get 8-bar chorus. It was that basically. But yeah, it was, I don't know. It's classic. It's like, it's the same as anything. You don't realize the sort of the impact of it and when you're in it. You know what I mean? It's just like, I thought, okay, well, language rap group, we're just going on North Wales doing myself and stuff like that. But then, like, years later, you realise the impact they had.
Iawn, Ed Holden, Mr. Phormula here, gynrychioli Gogledd Cymru, hip-hop Cymraeg. And when I hear the name DJ Jaffa, it reminds me of a time when I first got into Welsh hip-hop, because I had no idea that it even existed, that there was a scene in Wales, because I was based up in North. And there wasn't too much going on here, but as I got into a band called Pepler Pew, that's when this whole world of Welsh language music opened up in front of me, and obviously Welsh hip-hop was a part of that. And I was a massive fan of the Tystion. They were like, they were my idols, you know what I mean? I'd listen to those guys and be like, wow, where are those guys based? They just sound like Public Enemy. That's insane. And then as I learned more about the Tystion, obviously, I started doing more gigs and stuff. And then eventually we crossed paths. And it was a big thing for me to get to meet that whole crew. And obviously Jaff was a part of that crew. And getting to meet Jaff and quickly realising at the end of the day, like, I looked up to these guys massively. And then I quickly realised, oh, they're just like normal people like us. They're into music and they're just like really passionate about what they're doing. And that was the first thing that ever hit home for me about Jaff was, just an incredibly humble guy. And I remember we did a couple of gigs in Club Bach way back in the day. And getting to hang out and stuff and chat about vinyl and samples. And I just felt totally inspired after going down into the city and getting to meet everyone and learn more about the culture, and especially like how rich it is in Cardiff and down South Wales compared to how it was here. I just felt totally inspired, and so I got a lot of time from my man DJ Jaffa. Big up.
So what's the origin story behind Urban Poets coming together? There's already a relationship with Nathan the Watcher, who you knew from the Underdogs.
Yeah. Well, that was basically it. It's from the Underdogs. It's like I knew Nathan. He just wanted to work on tunes. He become like really entrenched in sort of like the Rastafarian ideology and stuff. And he wanted to be more conscious with his rap and stuff. So we started making tunes. He came down to my house and we'd just go through some stuff. And then he went away for something. I can't remember. But when he went away, there was a Cool Hurt gig in Newport. And I went to the gig, and Carrie, the singer from Urban Poets, she was like she did like sort of corporate gigs and stuff like that as a jazz singer. But she lived in Newport, and she got locked out of her flat. Her boyfriend had gone to the Cool Hood gig. So she ended up going there to just basically get the keys for the flat. And it was about that time when she got there that Cool Hood sort of opened the floor up, and he's like, oh, any MCs or singers or anything like that? And some MCs went up and all that, and Carrie jumped up and started doing these jazz standards over the top of breakbeats. And all my mates sort of jumped on my back and like, oh, you got to get a number, you got to work with it. I was like, yeah, don't worry, I'm on it. So I went and spoke to her and got a number and stuff. And then Nathan came back. I said to him, oh, look, I found this singer. I think she'd be perfect for Urban Poets. So we met up with her. We went through some tunes. I remember driving around in Carrie's car. It was me, Nathan, and Carrie, and put the tunes on. And she was just singing over the top of it. And me and Nathan were just like, yeah, definitely, this is it. Like, perfect fit. And to be honest, like, Carrie was way more professional than us. It was just like, she just knew like all of the PRS stuff, anything like that. You know, she was like on it. We were just like, yeah, we're just making some tunes. We want to put them out and go and perform or whatever, you know. And she sent our EP off, because we put an EP out on Rounder, which I'll get to obviously. But she sent the EP off to this competition that was running called the Diesel U Music Awards. It was like this new competition, and it's run by Diesel Clothing, and they had like record companies on board and all sorts of things. I think it's Fat City in Birmingham was the one who was judging the hip hop. Not Birmingham, sorry, Manchester was the one who was judging the hip hop. And yeah, she sent it off. She said, "Oh, I'm sending this to the competition." Me and Nathan just literally just didn't. And you're like, "Yeah, whatever. It's a competition. Okay, we're not going to win it. Whatever." You know, really sort of dismissive of it. Which, you know, in hindsight, we shouldn't have been. Just like, but and then I had a phone call off Carrie. Then, like a couple of months later, saying, "Oh, you're not a competition." I was like, "Yeah." She said, "Oh, we won." I was like, "What?" She's like, "Yeah, we won the best hip hop group award or hip hop act award, and we've got to go to London and we got to do this and got to do that." I was like, "Oh, okay, great." You know, it's like, so we ended up going to London. We got sponsored by Diesel for a year. The award ceremony was in the Shepherd's Bush Empire. I think it was like hosted by DJ Spoonie or something. It was Rodney P was there, Ty was there, the Next Men, Missy Elliott was there watching us. It was just, yeah, Sholarama, Goldie, all these people. We took we were up there already because we had to go up early, obviously, for the award ceremony and everything. We went to the Diesel shop, they got kitted out and stuff and whatever. And then Sophie from Rounder Records, she organised like a coach, or not coach, like a minibus of people to come up. So we had our supporters there and everything. And then as soon as they announced it, it was like big cheer from the crowd and stuff. It was
love it.
And that was the first time I met DJ Yoda as well, because DJ Yoda was like, I think he worked for some like magazines and stuff like that, and he was a DJ in London or whatever, but he won the best scratch mix DJ award the same year. And yeah, we went on and we did like stuff for Diesel because we were sponsored by him. So we did like what was it, Essential Festival. We were on the same stage as like, who was it? It was Bismarcky was on there. It was Master Ace, Blades, Roots Maneuver, Ice-T. It was just like, because they had Essential Festival was basically like a hip hop and a reggae festival. It was like one stage was reggae, one stage was hip hop, and like because Nathan was massively into reggae, we did our set and then he jetted over to the reggae stage, and like Carrie went with him over to the reggae stage. And I just stayed backstage, by the side of the stage, just watching all these hip hop acts. It was amazing. Nearly got, talking to Blade and stuff there. It's like, 'cause I knew Blade from London and whatever, so I was talking to him backstage and stuff. And then that's the first time I met like Einstein from Ugly Duckling and people. There was one point there was Bismarcky was on stage. And I was stood by the side of the stage. It was like, to my left, I had like Master Ace. Then it was me. Then it was Einstein. And then it was one of the guys from People Under the Stairs. Wow. And then it was just like watching Bismarcky sort of juggling records with his belly on the crossfader and stuff. It was just like surreal moments.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Looking back, what do you think is the legacy of that album and what you guys were doing to preserve the culture back then?
I think a lot. I think if that came out now, I think it would fit in a lot more, because it was like back then. I think we stood out a lot, especially like in UK scene, but I mean in just like Cardiff as a whole, because a lot of the groups were more sort of hardcore, if you want, for want of a better word. Where we were very sort of like conscious, soulful, the beats weren't like full on mad, nasty, grisly sort of like hip hop, underground hip hop. So we did sort of stand out a bit, but I think if it came out now, there would be more of a lane for it. don't get me wrong, people enjoyed it. And it's like when we had the launch party in the Toucan and stuff like that, it was packed out. I bumped into mates of mine from Newport, and they were like, I said, "Oh, wicked, you came to the launch." It was like, "Yeah, what's it for?" And I was like, "Well, it's our launch party of our EP." And he was like, "Oh, yeah, well, we just came because we got told it was going to be a dope night." That's it. So it's like, but it was wicked, So, but yeah, I do honestly think if it came out now, I think we'd sort of not be bigger, but I think we'd find our lane. We find our people more. Yeah, we did really stand out back then. It was dope, and we knew, people enjoyed it, but I think it really didn't fit in with a lot. It's like, we were out around the same time as like people like Humor at the Gritty, who was like aggressive battle rap type, and then and like there was like Potato Skins and stuff, which was, I think they were sort of like more of our people, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
They weren't as hardcore as a lot of the other groups. I think they were the nearest to us. But then, there was Black Tricks, there was like Ralph Ripshit, Mudmowth, all those people. They were more sort of like hardcore, just like lyricists, almost like battle MCs, And then we come along and we're very sort of like mellow, laid back, very sort of conscious sort of hip hop.
This is Sophie, aka LilMiz, Rapster Records. The label started initially in 2000, where I released my first EP, and a number of the tracks and cuts on that were using tunes developed by DJ Jaffa. Jaffa has been such a force in the city for such a long time. He has got legendary status. So when he came to me and, decided that it was the right time to put out his album, I was so stoked to be part of that process. Urban Harvest was one of those albums that you don't realise and expect to have the chance to work with. And if anything, I feel sorry for the fact that it was only out on Rounder and didn't get as more traction than it really truly deserved, because we were initially just like a very grassroots label with a small budget for putting any tracks out. And that album had such credibility and so many twists and turns on it that it definitely deserved to have a bigger audience than unfortunately it got at that time. Remembering where we were in terms of like the internet's just started when this came out, and the only way to really share tunes with people at that time was to put links to listen to them on Real Player. There wasn't any ability to sell tracks via the internet at that time. So we were very much we were literally running around trying to sell CDs, dropping them off by hand at record shops in London, in Bristol, down in Birmingham, all of the independent stores in Cardiff. Obviously, because of his status in the city, things sold like hotcakes nearby. But with the lack of the kind of like globalization of tunes at that time, it's just a real shame that some of the tracks that were recorded during that period of time, the city was so creative. Jaffa has he's been such an integral part of the city as far as driving hip hop going forward, that album, I think if it was dropped in the current day, it would be a whole different situation. There's a lot of love for that period of time, but there's also a real sense of shame that it wasn't picked up as well as other people could have and taken it forward.
Yeah, this is how we do. Hey yo, you can't afford that. Another MC. I'm giving in every category, I catch rap. In every category, I catch rap. In every category, I catch rap. Biddy bye, mic check. Up to the crime on the mic, I want to. Talking to you you and you. Yeah, bringing up me and my crew. Urban poets, you know it, we drop poetry. DJ Jaffa, my producer. We get fresh like blackberry soup.
Boom.
One time we need a fresh group.
Can you talk about the significance of Rounder Records as a label on the scene at that time?
Yeah, like Rounder One, it wasn't really a label, if you as the sort of a traditional sense of a label. It was more of a community. It was like people who sort of want to put music out. Sophie would facilitate that. Who's LilMiz. She would facilitate that, and then we'd just get on with it. We'd like front all the costs for the recording and stuff like that, and then she'd get the pressings done. We'd pay for that though. It wasn't like a thing of like she'd front the money and then recoup it later. It was literally we all pay for all our stuff.
Interesting.
But it was like a community sort of hub then. So it was like there was us, there was Johnny B, DJ Cuz, and it was like, because it was a community then, it was like Paul B was around as well, so Paul B was involved in it. So it was like me, Cuz, and Paul B. Then we formed Bronx River DJs, so that came out of that as well. And then it was like my brother-in-law and his mates had a band, but they were really into hip hop and they wanted to do like sort of like a live hip hop type thing. So that was where That I Am came up, and it was like me and Paul then were their DJs, and like I produced some backing tracks to go along with their live instrumentation. So, and then like I produced a track for LilMiz's EP, did cuts for her, so we were just cross-pollinating all these different groups and people and stuff. So yeah, it was more of a community than anything. So basically I'd been making all these like instrumental hip hop tunes for a while. And when I was on tour with Tistion, I met this guy called Mac, who was a student up in, I think it was Aberystwyth he was in. And he's from Long Beach in California. So he just sounded like Snoop. He was bizarre, and he came down to Cardiff, recorded a couple of tracks on my album. And yeah, he came down when we had the launch party and everything and performed there and stuff. But yeah, so I had him on there. Nice. I had one of the tracks off the Urban Poets EP was on my album as well. I had 2 tracks by That I Am were on there, and then the rest of them were like instrumental tracks. And then I had 1 track for Bronx River DJs, which is basically, it was a beat I produced, and then there was like, I think it's like me, then Paul B, then Cuz, then me, then Paul B, then Cuz, just go back to back, just cutting over the whole track basically. But yeah, that was it. It was just like a collection of stuff I'd been working on for ages.
How long have you been working on that stuff for?
Some of it was from not long after the Underdogs and stuff. So it was quite a while. It was like some of it was like I was doing like Shawnee's, but I was doing like just making beat after beat and then just sort of like allocating them later. So it's like the 1 track I did called Real. I think I did that, God, way before Rounder Records. I made the actual beat. And then later on, then I decided to do something with it. And I found this, there's a vocal sample from KRS-One from some interview. He was on TV, and I sampled that and then took it into the studio. Like we recorded all the album and the EP, we recorded in Grassroots. There's guy, DJ Guy. He used to be the engineer down there, and he engineered all the project. Nice. He also worked with he worked with like Headcase Lads and stuff. He was like the go-to engineer in Grassroots. So he's been doing a lot of hip hop stuff down there. But yeah, I just take the tracks down there, mix them down there, do all the cuts and stuff. And yeah, that was it. But it was just like a lot of the stuff, like I said, a lot of the stuff was old. Some of it was like brand new, but there was a lot of it with like ideas I'd sort of come up with a while back and then sort of like formulated into tracks later on.
Going back to Nate in the Watcher, there's a connection with another group around this time by the name of Manchild. How does Manchild come about?
Yeah, basically because I used to be a b-boy, they wanted someone to break alongside b-boy Kwam, who's like old school b-boy legend from Cardiff, on one of their stage shows. I think it was like the Big Weekend or something like that. They had this other guy DJing, but he wasn't really a scratch DJ or anything, but he could do a little sort of like ziggy like thing or whatever. But but they didn't realize I was a DJ at the time. They just wanted a b-boy.
How did they not realize that?
They're not really, or they never really were in the hip hop community, because like they weren't even originally from Cardiff. They were students, but sort of settled in Cardiff, but they were more into like electronic dance music and stuff. But they were managed by Mike Champion, who's the same guy who managed as a Prodigy. They got signed to One Little Indian Records, which is the same label as Bjork. And they just wanted this stage show to be amazing. They wanted like live guitars, live drums, bass. And then at the beginning, they just wanted 2 dancers and a DJ. Later on, then they realized who I was and what I could do. Their DJ left, and they got in contact with me and said, can you be our DJ? And do you know anyone who can MC? So I literally just grabbed Nathan. I said, Nathan, come on, you can be the MC. So I went to my first rehearsal. I think we rehearsed in like the Welsh Club or something like that, because the first gig I had was V99 Festival. So we rehearsed in the Welsh Club, and then they said about the MC. The next rehearsal, then I brought Nathan along, and they thought he was perfect. And then that was it. We ended up doing V99 Festival. And then just all over the place. We went, like, we played the festival in the north of Spain to like 14,500 people at 3:00 in the morning. It's just like bizarre. I remember the electric went out on the stage, and we had John, the tour manager. He had this big mag light. So he just rushed on the stage, shone the mag light on the drummer. Like Rich, the drummer, started drumming. And Nathan was right at the front of the stage, going, come on, wave in the crowd, and like getting them all hyped up. And then all of a sudden the power kicked in, and just everything just came back on, and just like the whole crowd just erupted. It was just like most amazing gig. And then after the gig, then we just sort of like, normally we just like pack and just sort of walk off stage. And then the tour manager said, no, wait, go in. Come on, they want to see you. So we had to go down the front of the stage, and then we were signing people's arms and stuff. It was like crazy. We did just about every major festival you can think of in the UK. Like we did like Homelands festivals and stuff like that. And then gigs with Ian Brown and stuff like that. It's just bizarre sort of time.
You've had a hell of a career already at this point. You've been a part of several groups who have come out to varying success. What was the philosophy behind Kids with Toys? What was the idea?
Kids with Toys is basically, it was like Richard was the drummer with Manchild. He was doing his own production thing on the side anyway. He had a group called Kafunk, which is like a sort of big beats type group, and he had a bit of a success. It was like the Chris Moyles show on Radio 1 had one of his tracks is their sort of one of their beds to talk over for years. So his PRS was crazy, but he wanted to do something hip hop wise. So he wanted to do it, but he wanted to do it with like a comedic edge. So not so much like total comedy, but with a slight sort of like tongue-in-cheek vibe going on.
Almost satirical.
So, yeah, that's the word I'm like. Yeah,
okay,
very yeah. So we had an MC, Adam. Then there was me DJing. There was Rich, and what's the other guy's name? There was another guy who was working with us for a bit as well. But it was mainly just me, Adam, and Rich. We did this one track called Coke Boy, which is basically talking about like what we'd experienced in festivals, where there was always backstage, there was always a massive line for the toilets, but no one really wanted to go to the toilet. They were just going to sniff a line. So it was just like all these A&R guys, like it was just like crazy. So he knew a comedy writer who wrote the whole thing. We got someone to record it, and then we just chopped it up. So it was like really fast in parts and stuff. It was just weird. It was like this basically like an A&R guy on coke with his hip hop beat. And then we had this other one track called Chocolate, which I produced, and it was like going on about you know the stereotypes of like rappers who use metaphors to describe women and stuff like that. Right. You're silky like chocolate, all this sort of. It was weird stuff. But then we flipped it, and he actually was talking about chocolate, and he's eating a bar of chocolate when he's rapping in the last verse and stuff. So yeah, stuff like that. We had like my daughter on there, my oldest daughter, when she was young. She's on there going chocolate, I love chocolate, all this. So it was weird, but that's the one I cut up the sample from Blade Runner on that one. But yeah, it's so it was that type of vibe we had. But it was all like dope hip hop as well. We had some tracks that were just straight up hip hop tracks as well, but with no comedy element at all. It was just like straight up. So that was our whole thing with that. And we did this one track called You Can't See Me or You Can't See Us, something like that. But we sampled the White Stripes, Seven Nations Army.
Nice.
And that actually got put out. I think it was through Hugh Stevens' label at the time. He had, I think it was Booby Trap Records or something like that. But that got put out through that. We had like an EP put out, and there was like another 2 tracks on the EP. I can't remember which ones they were now, but that got put out. And then, sort of like died a death then. It was, I don't know, it just sort of fizzled out. But me and Rich sort of kept on producing. And then we decided, it was like, so we just make a production team. I was like, okay. So we started a production team called The Kids. And at that time, there was this singer that Richard worked with back in the day. And she was in New York and got in contact with Rich and said, one of the tracks that she worked on with him, there was this guy in New York who was going to sort of remix it and stuff and sort of work on it and develop it a bit more with her. And just out of courtesy, he was like phoning him to say, do you want to be involved or whatever? And so he found out who this guy was, and he was this guy called Ken Lewis. And this is like social media really one big then. It was like MySpace was around then or something like that. So we didn't really know who he was. And then we sort of Googled it and found out this guy was like, he did like sample recreations. He was a mix engineer. He'd worked with like Kanye, Jay-Z, mixed Just Blaze first ever beats, Mary J. Blige, you name it. He's like all Dipset stuff he'd done. So we were like, do you know what? We're going to go over there and get in with this guy. So off our own backs, we just went to New York, ended up staying over there for a week, basically lived in his studio. And then off the back of that, then he loved what we were doing and decided to sort of help us out and put our tracks into the hands of people he knew, which it sounds simple enough, but the whole industry in America at that time, when it came to rap as well, it's like, I found it was very weird because you'd think, producers, A&R guys, artists, but it didn't work that way. It was literally like producers, A&R guys, managers, A&R guys, artist managers, Martin. It was just like, and then it was this whole thing of like they all had their people in place already and stuff like that. So it was so hard to break in. You know, I think it was like Cuban Links. I think he was start like Terror Squads. I mean, he was the nearest we had. He recorded some of our stuff.
Oh, really?
Yeah, nothing came out, but he was the nearest we had in the States. And then,
did you hear those songs?
It's just rough demos of them. But we had this one guy then, Edro. He was from Washington, DC. His executive producer on his album was LES, which is Naz's DJ.
Yeah.
But he loved us. And the guy who owned the label he was on was from the UK. So he had what was going to be the first single. I think it's called Whatever You Want. I think we called it. But Ken mixed it as well. And it was like, we thought we were pretty good at mixing and stuff. And then, you know, we mix our own stuff or whatever. And then we sent the track over, we recorded to it. And then we sent everything over to Ken. And he sent it back and we listened to it and we decided we ain't shit. It just sounded amazing. It was just like, what? But yeah, and he came over then, and we got invited to the Urban Music Awards to meet him and stuff. And Ken was coming over as well. And that was the first time I actually felt properly like a star. It was weird. It was like, we went to the music awards. We were like in the front table, looking around. There's like, look over there. There's like Craig David, and you look over there. There's like some people off Big Brother or something like that. It was all these weird people everywhere and stuff. And then it was like Skinny Man was over there with his kid, and there was like Baby J over there. It was just like all these people. Madness, but that was cool. We saw that. Ejo performed, Sway performed, there's a few other people and all that. But then outside, then we walked outside, and there was like blacked out sort of like SUV type cars pulled up, and we were like, oh, they're not for us. They can't be for us. And they were like, oh, Ken was like, come on, jump in.
Wow.
And they were for us. And we were like, oh, okay, where are we going? Went to this club, got out of the cars, walked in, security walking us in, it's a roped off area, Chinese food all night, Cristal by the bottle. I was just like, wow.
Had you tried Cristal at that point?
Mate, I didn't even drink at the time, but I thought I'm never going to get this opportunity ever again. So I just started drinking it. It's like pop. It's not that good. It's like, but yeah, I was like, and the owner of the label was just like ordering all this like food, and you see all the people looking at me like, oh, who's these guys? Who's these guys? You know, it's madness. We did that, and then we thought, oh yes, it's going to be a big album. It's got like, you know, I think he had some good features on it. I can't remember who, but from what I remember, he had some good features on there as well. Nice. But then, then the label just folded, because the guy who owned the label basically made his money in real estate. He was like multi-millionaire, and then he just got bored, to be honest, and folded the label. So yeah, I've still got the track. I'm going to have to put it out or something, stick it on YouTube or something like that. But I've still got the track here. But yeah, it's good. He's got a little drop at the beginning saying, "No, the kids don't play," and all this sort of thing. It's wicked. But yeah, we went on then to get management in London. It was 365 Artist Management, which they deal with like producers and stuff and songwriters. But they were sort of pushing us in a direction that we didn't want to go in. You know, we'd been to New York, we'd done all this stuff with these rappers and stuff like that, and that was the direction we wanted to go. But they were like looking at us and like, actually, Ashley Tisdale's looking for tracks. And I was like, who's she? They're like, you know, High School Musical. I was like, really? So it was that. But it was like, we did, because we wanted to do like R&B as well. We like full on hip hop, but we wanted to do some R&B stuff as well. So we ended up working with Keisha White, who most famously, she did the theme music to Tracy Beaker, sung the theme song to Tracy Beaker. But she's done other stuff. She's been over to the States and worked with like Scott Storch and people like that. But we went to a studio in Brixton, stayed there for a few days, and it was like, I think Kano was in the like next studio and stuff like that. But we did this one track, it was dope, it was going to go on an album, and then it got dropped from the album and stuff. And there was other things that happened. It was just like we ended up going to the studio in Kilburn, stayed there for the entire week, working on this one track. This label loved the track. They wanted it for this group. It was like an R&B group they had. They wanted it for the group. So they put us up in this studio for a week, and we just had all these songwriters coming in. This one songwriter, she works with like the cinematic orchestra, and she'd worked with Roots Maneuver and people like that. Another one, he'd been working in the States with Bad Boy. It's just all these different sort of like people came in doing songs for this one tune for this group. But they all came in just for this one tune to record, and then they found the one song they wanted, and then the boy band got dropped, or the R&B group got dropped, and it was just like, so we got at that point. Then we sort of like, Rich was doing stuff for, like those Sunday sort of newspaper magazines, whatever, and they'd have like a free CD on there.
Yeah,
and it would be like film soundtracks, or like the theme musics of TV shows, but it wasn't the actual ones. It was sort of like redone. He'd do all of them. That was his thing. He'd do like a lot of sample. It was almost like sample recreation, but you recreate the theme music, and he'd do stuff like that. So he had a lot of that on. So he said, I'll go and do a lot of that. You work on some other stuff, and then and then we'll come back together and we'll push on, like. Mm. And then just on the off chance, I just checked the website of the management, and the kids was nowhere to be seen on there anymore, but Rich's name was on there. And I was like, do you know what? Fuck the industry. Shout out to Solange. That was it. It's like, yeah. So, and at that time as well, it was like, for me, it was like a bit of a message as well, because it was like, that happened around about the same time my house got burgled and my computers stolen with my programs on and stuff like that. And it was just like, it's a message. I need to go back to DJing. So yeah, that's what I did. I gave up. The last thing I produced was 2007. And it was for a rapper called L Train out of Buffalo, New York. And that one came out on, he had a mixtape he was putting together. And he basically had producers from all over the world. There was me from the UK. There was someone from Germany, some from America, Canada, someone from Japan. But he had all these producers doing tracks, and that came out. And that was the last thing I did. That was the last time I think I did production-wise anyway. And then, just threw myself back into DJing.
So all of this happens at a time when GLC explodes, and for better or for worse, people are looking at Wales a lot differently, right? When you think about Wales and hip-hop developing after that point, what do you think were those biggest turning points that changed the perception of Welsh hip-hop?
I think, like you say about GLC, I mean, they sort of put Wales in the spotlight, but I think they did it in the same way that as Derek B was looked at as by Americans.
Right.
It was in one way it was a good thing for Welsh hip hop, because they actually thought, oh well, there is hip hop in Wales. And then on the other side of it, I mean, it's a bit of a bad thing, because people were just looking at Welsh hip hop as a bit of a joke, because GLC were a comedy group. And they didn't dig any deeper than that. Some people, a lot of people did, and a lot of people knew about the Welsh scene. It's like, shout out to Blade and like Gunshot and that. They knew about like the Welsh scene. And a lot of the people who used to come down then, it was like Maestro and Jargon and people like that, and Jest and everyone who used to come down with the higher learning nights. But this is like early on, it was like Blades, Blades, Gunshot, or like all Hard Noise boys, like Q-Rock. I used to work in the Wimpy in Otter Street with Q-Rock, from Hard Noise and Son of Noise and that. So it's like they all knew. I remember when I worked in the Wimpy, I walked around with like a couple of the guys from Gunshot, walked around the West End of London like after our shift, and just basically just sort of informed them about our scene. And they were just like, wow, yeah. It's like, so they knew about it. But I mean, back then we didn't really have anyone that sort of like, stood out. And back then as well, it's like, social media was not a thing real, it was like MySpace or whatever. But then you had people sort of like chipping away at it. You like people like Humorak, who was like, chilling with like Jest and people like that. So, they knew it. There was like all these like sort of well-known UK rappers and working with them and stuff, and like Task Force and people like that. So all these people sort of like chipping away at the misconceptions laid by GLC. I think people sort of like Welsh hip hop as a joke. And it didn't help with things like, it didn't help with things like, even to this day, like Wikipedia is sort of a go-to for people to find out about stuff. Yeah. So if you type in like Welsh hip hop on Wikipedia, you've got GLC, Tistion. I think there's a group that Griff Reese from Super Furry Animals did with a hip hop producer. And there's one other, which I can't remember. And that's it. That's all they've got on Wikipedia about Welsh hip hop.
Shocking.
It is.
We're talking about a time which was very much transitional coming up back then for yourself. You mentioned higher learning. Let's talk about that event, which was, an era within itself. You played a major part during the noughties at higher learning, didn't you? Talk about those characteristics that made up the best of hip hop at that time compared to other nights happening today.
Again, it was a hub for everyone. It was just like, I don't know how many times I've said that, but it was another one. It was just like, it's a place where anyone who was into hip hop could go and they'd find a friend, straight away. And they'd see dope artists. They'd see artists from outside of Cardiff. They'd, from London, wherever, alongside local artists. There would always be an open mic. So if you thought you were dope and you wanted to show your skills, you'd go on. It's like, I think like, Mudmowth, I think was, I think he first sort of showed his skills at an open mic, and, he was like amazing and just like one of the best rappers on Associated Minds label. But then, and then they'd have, I remember they'd had a live broadcast from Rodney P and Skits on from One Extra. They had that there. They had like Skinny Man there. They had Just there. They had, what was it? Arrested Development they had there. They just, that place was just, it was a home away from home, basically, if you were into hip hop. And it wasn't just rap. It wasn't just the DJs. It was the B-boys. It was just, everything. And they, if they could have Graf in the club, they would. It's just like, but yeah, it was just an amazing play. I remember when I did, which we'll probably get to, my world record attempt, there was the next higher learning, they had a settee on the stage, and basically Jason said to me, no, you stood up enough and played enough, you can sit down and rest now. So they had me sitting on this settee all night. I couldn't stay there all night, to be honest. I just got up and I was like, no, mate, I gotta just get in the crowd. because there was people in there who didn't know what it was there for, and they were coming in like, "Who's this dude sounding us?"
Love that.
But yeah, it was. But things like that, it was just like, you know, proper community sort of place. And it's like if you showed your skills on the open mic, then, you know, there's a chance that you'd be able to sort of support another artist later on. Like, it's brilliant.
It was a stomping ground for a lot of people. If you were a DJ, an artist, or a breaker, that was the place to be. It was the training ground back then.
Oh, definitely. And it was no sort of like, I don't know, beef or anything like that. It was just like everyone was there. They knew what they were there for, and they showed their skills. And it was, everyone supported each other.
How do you think it elevated you and your skills?
I think just having a sort of like place to actually go and show my skills. It was
a platform.
A platform. I think it's same thing for a lot of people there. A lot of the MCs, a lot of the B-boys, you know, the DJs, everything. There was something to look forward to. It was, you know, it was once a month. So it was like, you have your month, you hone your skills, you go there and show your skills, and that was it. You know, it was brilliant. It was like, to me, it's the best hip-hop night the Cardiff has ever had.
Completely agree. Couldn't agree anymore. You talked about you attempting, of course, this world record for the longest continuous DJ marathon. What was the motivation behind that? And what was the process like?
Right. Well, I used to go from like job to job, basically. I had a day job and then DJing. So it was like, I'd go to my day job, go home, have a little bit of rest, go and DJ. But basically, I'd be awake for like 24, sometimes 48 hours straight. And I remember reading something about a world record attempt, longest DJ set and everything. And it was like, the world record was like 74 hours. I was like, I'm awake for quite a long time sometimes. Like, I could do that. Yeah, I'm going to have a go. So I looked into it and went to Tate's Community Centre, which my mother-in-law works there, and she still works there now. And Simon, who used to run the cafe at the front, he said, "Oh yeah, you know, you can do it in here. We can sort out you know, the license and everything," because they used to have sleepovers for people who, you know, like kids have sleepovers there and stuff like that. So the staying open for that amount of time, it was no problem. And so I started on I think it was like midday on the Friday, and I played for 70 hours. Which is 4 hours shy of the world record at the time, which to this day I'm a bit gutted about. I'm like, you know, but I beat the British record. I think I held the British record for like 2 years, and then someone beat it. But yeah, and this is back in the day. It was just all vinyl, so I was like surrounded by crates of records. And I thought, right, if I do it, I'm not going to just do it for nothing. I'll do it, you know, see if I can raise some money and stuff as well. So it's like, I thought, thinking of all these charities and whatever, and I came up with like Amnesty International. So I thought, right, I'll raise some money for Amnesty International. I think I raised about just under £1,000, something like that, for Amnesty doing that. But yeah, it was like, to this day, people say it's one of the best parties they've ever been to, because they would like come in the day, going out clubbing, coming back and partying till early hours, falling asleep there, waking up, partying again. It's just like, it was mad. It's like, I remember Kaptin saying that he came there Saturday night, fell asleep there, and then woke up like early hours of Sunday morning to be playing like 80s soul and stuff. And he was just like, he said it was most amazing sort of like alarm clock, if a better word.
The perfect wake-up call.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, yeah, towards the end though, it was just like I was hallucinating. I had a massive blood blister on my shin. I was standing up too long.
Yikes.
It was like, because you had to DJ for 8 hours, then you could have a 15-minute break. But what I was doing, I had a friend who worked for something to do with the NHS or something, but she could get these like drugs tests. because I didn't want anyone, because in the rules they don't say that you can't take drugs, basically, like amphetamines or anything like that. It doesn't say anything about that in the rules. So I didn't want anyone turning around to me and saying, oh, you were taking speed, you were taking this and whatever. So I got her to give me these tests. So I was doing 8 hours, having a 15-minute break. Then I was doing 60 on my next one. Then I was doing 16 hours, and then I'd take a drugs test. So it's basically you just go to the toilet, wee on it, and if it changes color, if it changes to this one color, you've got amphetamines in your system. But it didn't. But yeah, and so I was doing that, and then I got sponsored by Red Bull as well, which.
That helps.
I wish I didn't, to be honest.
Why is that?
Because I wanted to go as long as possible without having coffee, Red Bull, anything like that. Right? Wanted to just do it off, get it as far as I could, and then when I really needed it, I'd have coffee, I'd have Red Bull, or whatever.
Sure.
But I got to a point, I'd have a coffee, then I had a can of Red Bull, then I had another can of Red Bull. Then I had another can of Red Bull. It was just like, when it got to a point, I was just like crawling the walls. I was like, but yeah. And then towards the end, obviously, it's like I said, I was hallucinating. I had blood blister on my chin, and my emotions were all over the place. It was like the BBC turned up to interview me. Someone came in and said, "Oh, the BBC are here," and I just burst into tears. And I was just like, I didn't know why I burst into tears. So it's just like all over the place, and I was laughing hysterically. It was like, but mate of mine, Eddie Pilliner, he just he said, "Oh, I'm gonna get you some stimulants. Like he's gonna get like glucose drink and stuff or whatever for me." And he's a big dude. He's like stocky, tall, got like chipped teeth and stuff. And he's just like drove down to the local chemist, screeched outside of how he just run in. He was like, "I need stimulants." And they all looked at him and shit themselves. He was like, "Oh God." So he was like, no. And he explained then what it was about. And they were like, "All right, we'll take this." And he gave me a glucose drink, mixed it all up in a pint glass, gave it to me. I just downed that. And then that was it, the end of it. I got sort of taken home then, because it was like I was just dreaming. I was in this dream state, but I was awake, sort of thing. And they just pulled the plug, and it was like, you can't go on. So I got taken home, and then I woke up like about 4 hours later, wide awake, because of this bloody glucose drink.
Typical.
Yeah. But yeah, I woke up and I was just like, didn't know where the hell I was, and I just started crying. I was like, "Oh my God, what's happened?" So it's like, and then it calmed down a bit. Then my emotions got back in check again. I was just like, "Yeah, it's cool. I did it." And yeah, and then like a congratulations phone calls and stuff and all this. But yeah, it was working, man. Good experience.
There were rules outside of the rule you mentioned earlier in terms of what you could play and how much you could play that. Can you speak to that?
Yeah. Basically, you couldn't play the same record within a 4-hour period. You had to write down every record you played, and you had to have someone there. They say you should have someone there. They should have a dance floor or something like that. But basically, I looked into it, and they said, look, as long as someone is there, or a group, a few people are there or whatever, that's fine. You haven't broken the rules.
Right.
So there was always someone there. And so that was about it. And it's like the writing down of the records was a nightmare, because I remember sort of like starting out pretty, like, I haven't got the best handwriting, but it was legible, you could read it. But then by the last one, and it looked like just a spider just sort of dipped his feet in ink and just walked across the page. It was terrible. And it was like, I'd lean over to start writing it, and I'd sort of zone out and start sort of like leaning forward, like, whoa, and wake myself up again. I'm like, oh, no, can't do that. So I try and write it really quick as well. So it was like towards the end, it was just like this mad mess across the page. But yeah, it was, it was great. And then years later, then when obviously lockdown and all that, I did another one then, but it was a 24-hour Twitch set. I did it to raise money for Kitay's Community Centre. But that was much easier. It was 24 hours and it was in my back room, so it was fine. But yeah, people say to me, it's like, because it's the 20th 20th anniversary next year. 20 years ago when I first did it. Yeah. So people have been saying to me, "Oh, you're going to do it again?" and all that. And then the answer to that, I shall tell everyone now, is a big fat no.
When you look back at your contributions so far, what strikes you most?
I don't know. I like I'm pretty, like, people tell you I'm pretty humble. I'm not like one of these things person who goes out and blows my trumpet every 2 seconds. But I love the fact that there's different generations who sort of like acknowledge my legacy, if that makes sense. It's like I went to like, I know all the older boys, you know, they all know what I did and stuff. But then it's like I went to Porter's the other Friday, and it was this rapper called Fig. It was a launch for his new EP or album. I think it's an EP. But and you know, he was so appreciative of me coming down, and it was like there was all these newer artists. It was like Ezra was there, and he sort of introduced me to someone. He was like, "Oh, this is Jaffa, the Don." You know, he's like old school DJ legend, blah, blah, all this sort of thing. Give me this big spiel to introduce me to this guy and that. And it was like Raz Kid was there. It was like Mesa Great was there. It was like Luca RV, all the new school. There was a rapper from Cambridge called Jaya Had a Dream, and she's honestly one of the dopest new MCs I've heard in ages. Wicked. But she was there as well, and she was like, "Oh my God, it's amazing to finally meet you and stuff." And it was just like, it was just so nice. This new generation, you know, I'm old enough to be their dad, all of them, you know, and it was just like they were so appreciative of me coming down and just watching and stuff, you know. That I just love that. I love that I'm, you know, I'm not looked at as this sort of like old school sort of fuddy-duddy guy who just doesn't know anything about new music and this. It's like I'm not. That's one of my biggest sort of like pet hates is, like, I'm 54 years old, right? And there's like people I know who are even younger than me, but they're stuck in their way of, they just listen to 90s rap, and anything new it's not rap, it's not good. And to me, that's just basically falling into the trap of like my parents or grandparents, you know, looking at all these different types of music and say, "Oh, it's not even music" and stuff. But I you know, in my eyes, it's like this culture, if it doesn't morph and grow, it's just going to die. So it's just like, you know, some of the music that comes out, some of it I might not like, but it's not for me. I'm not going to turn around and say, this is not music, this is not what I grew up on, this is blah, 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 blah. I'm not going to say all of that, because that just puts me in the same box as people who said it about my music when I first started out. But then there is dope. But then with all of that new stuff that comes out, there is dope music as well. It's
absolutely
like Fake's dope. You know, all these people I've met, you know, Mace's dope, Fake's dope, Jay had a G's dope, you know, Ezra, everyone. They're all like, they've all got this. It's like one of the, you know, in Cardiff, it's like there's a rapper called Neeks, who's not just a rapper. She does like garage stuff, she does R&B stuff and stuff like that. But I think she's one of the dopest artists out there. Man Like Vision is like, his dad's a rapper who and he's in a group with a producer who's in my top 5 of producers of all time, DJ Alchemy. Like, I've said that before, and I said it's not just because I know him, it's because his music is dope as hell. And he just blows me away with just about everything he does. And to me, he's in my top 5. Like, I'm not saying like top 5 Welsh. I'm not saying top 5 UK. I'm saying top 5 worldwide. He's all time. So, you know, I don't know. It's just I just don't get that sort of like mentality of people who just stay in their box but put down everything else.
Yeah,
it's not productive.
Well, the fact that you feel as elevated and as energized as you do, talking about these younger artists, meeting these younger artists at this show you were talking about, must speak volumes about the future being in safe hands, right?
Oh, definitely. It just shows me, it's like with my radio show. I got a radio show every other week on Rapster-Tee's radio, which is based in Paris, and I've showcased underground rap music. From the first show, it came up in my sort of what's called my history memories on Facebook. Mm-hmm. The first show I did on, which is I think I've just uploaded show 125. But my first show, the only Welsh artists I played on that show were DJ Alchemy and Benji Wild. Fast forward, I'm playing like, I had a show the other week and it was around about, say about 75% Welsh artists. So that definitely tells me the future's in good hands.
Writing down, man's a madman lyricist. No breaks, card, man, just limitless. Man's killing the generation I'm living in. And any beat that I'm giving, I'm ripping it. So many bars, man, carry like Mariah. And when I spit, I ignite, no lighter. Man talk realness, I ain't no liar. Build an empire, I'm trying to go higher. I'll get dirty like Dyke and I'll fizz up like Sprite. Feelings I'm written, all this sick, this shit that I'm spitting, I'm ready to kill it. I'm the definition of winning. Vision, you in the featherweight fam, you in the wrong division. Ain't no top when the calm down with your tiny temper. I'm on the beat, it gets cold like December. You best remember who you go toe to toe with, cause I'm the hardest in the game, fam, you know this.
Do you have any standout memories supporting as a DJ for any overseas artists over the years?
Yeah, I got loads. It's like is it like supporting Wu-Tang in Newport? That was great. And I think the actual gig was great, but then the after party was even better, because it was like I got asked to DJ the after party. I got there and it was some of the DJs who used to do the Sugar and Spice R&B nights in Cardiff and stuff, because Shaz was the promoter and Shaz is like the guy who runs that night. But I got there and DJ Symphony, who was DJing for, he was Raekwon's DJ, but he was DJing for Wu-Tang. And he was there as well. And they just went, yeah, you guys got it. And just left it to me and in Symphony to DJ the whole after party. And then when Symphony was on, I was in the VIP area and Shaz was like, oh, do you want to meet Raekwon? I was like, oh, yeah. I'll be a bit sort of, oh, is this Raekwon? You know, Wu-Tang. It's like, oh, you know, how's he going to be? Because, you know, you look at Wu-Tang and you look at their persona and stuff like that, you think they're going to be a bit sort of like, I don't know, standoffish, bit of sort of like, you know, gnarly and whatever. Nicest guy you meet. He's brilliant. He was just like, I was chatting to him and he was like, oh yeah. Do you like Big Daddy Kane? He's my favorite rapper. And I'm like, can you play some of that for me? I was like, yeah. You know, of course I know Big Daddy Kane. I'm old as shit, mate. Don't worry. So yeah, but there's a video then a mate of mine took from the VIP area, and it was like the VIP area sort of elevated and the dance floor's down, and then the DJ booth is elevated, so you can look straight across from the VIP area into the DJ booth. And my mate took a video of when I was playing Big Daddy Kane, and there's like Raekwon's is sort of like on the balcony, he's sort of like just shocking out over the top of the balcony, like loving it. Then he did a shout out for me, then like a drop for me and all that later on. Nice. And then Paul B was like, oh, get me a drop as well. So it's like, oh, can you do it for me, mate? Yeah, no problem at all. Done that. So yeah, that was a standout gig, definitely. That and the after party for that. Another one was when I did the De La Soul show in Newport. And it was me, MC Eric, who was a promoter for that, and he got me on there, and he phoned me the night before the gig. I was like, because Jay with the Damager was supporting. He phoned me the night before the gig. He was like, Jay, we haven't got a DJ. I was like, okay. He said, oh, can you DJ for him? I was like, yeah, it shouldn't be a problem. I said, oh, get him to send the tracks over. I'll load them up, ready. And the track listing and all that. And then I'll meet up with him then at the gig. We'll go through what we're going to do and then sorted. No problem. I ended up having the tracks an hour before we were supposed to hit the stage. And then I met him like about 10 minutes before we went on stage. It was literally like, Jaffa, right, okay. Start off with this one, then go to that one. Yeah, boom, boom, boom. Yeah, right, that's it. Right, okay, ready? Let's go. Boom, on the stage. Done. And afterwards, then my brother was in the audience. He came up, he's like, oh, so how long you done J-Woo for then? I said, well, I met him how long was the set? The set was about half an hour. So say 40 minutes ago, I met him. He was like, but he looks so professional. But that comes down to the experience I've had and wanting to be a DJ for rappers back in the day. Is sort of like doing it for so long, just knowing what to do. But yeah, that was another one. And then another one was like DJ wise, meeting Jazzy Jeff, supporting him in club in Cardiff. One I forgot about was there used to be a shop in one of the arcades in Cardiff called Renegade DJ Hardware, and they put on an in-store in there for with Cash Money, DJ Cash Money, and they wanted me to support. And,
wow.
Yeah, and I went in there, and they as soon as I got there, I was getting ready to start and all that. And they said, oh, well, Cash Money's upstairs. Go and say hi. I was like, really? Like, yeah, go on. So I walked up and I was like, oh, yeah, what's happening, Cash? And he was like, oh, what up? All this. And he's like, oh, yeah, so you're supporting you? I was like, yeah. And I said to him, he looked knackered. He was lying there. I said, oh, you look a bit tired. He was like, nah, man, I live for this shit. I'll just come down. I'll just smash it and all that. But then later on, my wife came in with my daughter, who was at that time, I think she must have been about 1, and he was shooting a video for his tour and stuff like that. And he's like, "Oh, is this your kid?" He was like, "Oh, let me hold it." He's cuddling my daughter and stuff. But he was like on the camera, he's like, "Cash loves kids, yeah," all this sort of thing. But yeah, he was wicked, man. He was a really nice guy.
You're in a very unique place in that you're one of the few people who really knows where DJing is from and where it's going. Where is it going as we enter hip hop's 50th year next year?
I think it's twofold. I think it's in a good place because there's a lot of people out there who want to be DJs and have the access to equipment to become DJs, but also will look back and take on board the history of DJing, where it all comes from, and then eventually might go back and, instead of just using equipment that they've got to start off with, like a controller or something like that, they'll go back and start using vinyl, and get the whole experience, stuff like that. That I think is a good thing. I think that's great. I think, that is pushing the legacy forward, but also knowing where it comes from. And then there's a section of people then who will want to be DJs and don't care about the legacy of it, don't care about the history of it. They just want to smash out DJ sets without knowing the fundamentals. That I sort of got an issue with, but it is what it is. It's the same in just about anything. You'll find people who just want to skip a load of steps and just do the thing. That I don't like. Honestly, I'm being diplomatic, but no, I really don't like people who do that. It's the same with hip hop culture in itself. It's just like there was a quote. I was trying to think of it recently. It was like a little rap that one of the last poets did on his documentary, and I'm not gonna try and rap it. But basically the gist of it was about if you haven't got roots, then the branches can't grow. But it was like he put it much more eloquently than I did and put it in this little rap, which I love to find a documentary. I can't remember what documentary it was now. But as soon as I heard that, it just sort of resonated with me. And I was just like, yeah, of course. You know, it's like, you know, but that's how I think that's how I've sort of lived my life when it comes to hip hop culture, when it comes to DJing, anything like that. It's like, I don't see how you can sort of like progress a culture without the roots. You know, it just doesn't make sense to me. It's like this whole thing with like, there was a rapper saying like, I think was it 21 Savage who said something about Nas not being relevant anymore and stuff. I was just like, yeah, it's just stupid stuff like that. It's ridiculous.
What's next for DJ Jaffa?
Next for me? Oh, wow. Just keep on DJing. Hopefully get abroad again. Because, yeah, I'd love to DJ abroad again. Like, I've got fond memories of DJing in different countries. So I'd love to do that again. It's like I did... like my best and my worst gig was in the same city. And it was in Beijing. Yeah, it was my mate, DJ DSK. I think he's like Southampton originally, but he lives over in China. And through Slamo, who does the Elemental Force and put on the Breaking and Bay, or part of the big Breaking and Bay stuff and all that. It was through him and DSK that they got me over there to do 3 dates it was one in Qingdao and 2 in Beijing. Qingdao, I was working, it was just like, I took Slamo over as well. He was my MC, sort of like, you know, the same way as like Jazzy Jeff will have like, what's his name, Mad Skills. It was like Slamo was my Mad Skills, basically. So he did the Qingdao one, and he went to the club, and like there was like a big video wall with our faces on it and stuff. That was just like mad as hell, surreal. But then we did Beijing the next day, or next night, and it was in this club called Club Mix. It holds thousands of people, about 4,000 people, something like that, 3,000 people maybe. I don't know. But my computer crashed halfway through my set.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. Luckily, they had 2 sets of turntables there, and there was another DJ there who just jumped straight onto the other set. He said, like, do your thing, get your stuff up again, and then I'll even take back over us. So that was cool. But I was mortified. I was just like, why? You know, all the places. But then that to me, that's my worst DJ experience. Like thousands of people just standing there staring at me when there's no music. I was just like, no. But and the next night then played this club called Club Mingus, which was an open air rooftop nightclub in Beijing, in the middle of Beijing. Starts at 6 in the evening, finishes 6 in the morning. And it's best clubs I've ever played to this day. Loved every minute of it. It was me, DSK, and then the promoter as well, DJ, the 3 of us. And we just went everywhere. Just went from like hip hop, b-boy stuff. There was a group of b-boys there. Funk, soul, 90s house, boogie, disco, just all over the place. Just smashed it. And yeah, to this day, it was my favorite. And it wasn't just like local, like people from Beijing there. It was like, there was a load of Americans there. There was some people from the UK there, from France. There was like all over the place. And it was such a good club, such a good night. It was so good that we got, the next day we were supposed to be called by the hotel because we were flying back, and they didn't give us a call in the morning, so we missed our flight. And like DSK sort of kicked off at the hotel, sort of like, you know, shouting in Mandarin. It was like at them. It's weird. It was like this sort of guy from Southampton with this Southampton sort of attitude, but sort of shouting at me in Mandarin. It was just weird. But I don't know if they phoned the airport or what. But we managed to get on the next flight, and we stopped off in Germany then, and we were doing this like survey in Germany, and we told this woman who was doing this survey, because we had time to kill, and we do this. We said, oh yeah, we missed our flight, and we managed to get on this other flight and all that. She looked at us and we were like, that never happens. You normally got to pay for the nose, like for stuff like that. So I think I had DSK to thank for that. He must have kicked off so much, because it's all about like, you know, they got that honor thing and stuff like that. So it's like, right, they must have got in touch with the airport or something like that. Something must have happened, because there's no way we would have done that and got back without paying anything. But it was just the mad travels of Jaffa and Slamo is crazy. But yeah, I did that. Those were my two. I remember going over to Hong Kong as well for a week, which was like, I played in a shopping center in Hong Kong, and it was like for the Welsh government. It was like Roger Morgan was in charge then, and he did a jolly to come over to, you know, Hong Kong to see us and all that, and camera ops and photo ops and all that sort of thing. But it was me. There was some classical musicians. There was an opera singer. There was the woman who designed the door handles of the Millennium Center for some random thing. There was the person who invented this like a Welsh whiskey pen something. Okay. Yeah, it was on this big podium in the middle of the shopping center in Hong Kong. And random stuff like that. But yeah, it's like, that's just from me throwing myself back into DJ, and all these opportunities started coming up. And I played in a castle in Tuscany and stuff, and it's just like weird stuff. But yeah, I just, you know, that's what's next for me, is just like more DJing, just wherever I can. I'd love to go aboard again. Residencies on the weekends, you know, DJing for more artists, and my radio show. So that's me. Just keep on pushing. And Zenith as well. I gotta mention Zenith. It's like I mentioned him earlier on. It's like there's Jason Camilleri, who's Dregs, it's Johnny B and Evil C. All of them, well, two of them ex-Underdogs, one of them ex-Potato Skins and host of Higher Learning. And I'm on board as well as their DJ, and I've produced a couple of tracks for them as well. So, I say produced, they're old beats that I did before 2007, which we revamped, and they've got them. I think I've got the first single is, I can't remember the name of it now. Oh, they're going to kill me. But that's going to be coming out on Rapster Records, featuring Asher Jane singing on the hook as well. So yeah, so we've got that to look forward to as well. So it's like old school artists coming out from a new label.
This is Tom Clugston, aka DJ Killer Tom, live from Dockview Studios in Barry. And the first thing that comes to mind when I hear the name DJ Jaffa is hip-hop history. The guy has been there since day one, and he's still one of the most active DJs on the scene. He's super versatile. He plays all styles of music. He's not just an expert in hip-hop, but reggae, funk, disco, boogie, you name it, he knows it. And Jaffa has flown the flag for Welsh hip-hop, and hip-hop in general, across the ages, and is still doing that to this day. Alongside his world record attempts, he's also one of the most consistent DJs I know. Played alongside him on weekends for many years now, and it's an absolute honour. So long may it continue. Big up DJ Jaffa.
Yes, DW Smith, The Hellions, Bad Picasso Records, Dirty Alex,
And DJ Jaffa to me is literally the beginning of my career. He was the first DJ to spin a beat and me jump on open mic and do a terrible verse too. He's everywhere. He was the first DJ that chucked some cuts on a track for me. He's, all around Cardiff, all around Wales. His name's everywhere, whether it's a hip-hop gig, whether it's a gig in a pub that you walk in and then all of a sudden some dope hip-hop's playing and you're like, yo, it's Jaffa. Yeah, man, he's the one. Do you know what? Jaffa's the king. Yeah, he's the king of Cardiff.
Hello, this is Hugh Stevens from BBC Radio, and on all the networks I've done shows on, Six Music, Radio Wales, Radio Cymru, Radio 1, DJ Jaffa has played a part in programmes on all of those networks. Recently on Six Music and Radio Wales, he came in to give a kind of potted history of the hip-hop scene in Cardiff and in Wales. Brilliant on Radio Wales, but also on Six Music, introducing it to people who knew nothing about the history of hip-hop music in Cardiff and Wales. And on Radio Cymru and Radio 1, he did mixes for me and Beth session in Wales on Radio 1. And on Radio Cymru, he was part of Tystion, and he was an incredible scratch DJ element to Tystion, the Welsh language rap crew. And what I love about Jaffa is his positivity. I love that he is interested in the next generation and what's happening now in Cardiff. All those mixes that he puts together of new music from Cardiff is so inspiring. And I love that he's so humble with his history, but also he's very proud of his history as well. And he's proud of what it was like to be a b-boy and a hip-hop DJ and a rapper in the 80s in Cardiff and part of that crew, and the part that played in the whole of UK rap story is fascinating. And he's so positive and eloquent with his sharing of all these news, of all the stories. So he's such an amazing and important DJ, and I know he's constantly looking forward and playing club nights. Completely obsessed with music, complete music obsessive, and I can't wait to hear what role DJ Jaffa plays as well in the upcoming exhibition at the National Museum of Wales in Cardiff, the 50 years of rap and hip-hop culture in Wales. I'm sure DJ Jaffa will have his thumbprint all over that, because he has played such an important part in joining the dots between cultures and between languages, and it all comes down to him being an amazing DJ and a very, very nice man. Cheers, DJ Jaffa.
Yo, this is Joe Blow, bigging up my boy DJ Jaffa. Whenever I think of Jaffa, all I think about is a legend. He's a pillar of the community, and his contribution to hip hop's totally unparalleled by anyone else. For me, I'm one of the lucky ones. I've got to work with him on many projects over the years, and I'm eternally thankful for that. Whenever I make a track, Jaffa's the first person I send it out to, and if it doesn't get his stamp of approval, I don't put it out. It's that simple, And whenever I hear my music on a mixtape, Jaffa's doing it, it's one of Jaffa's mixtapes, I wear that shit like a badge of honour,
My name's Terry Cooper, formerly known as Rapster-Tee. I was a rapper from about 85 to 95, and I met Jaffa around that time and known him ever since. Jaffa is a constant. He's been there from day one. I think of a guy who's always there at every event, every gig, behind the decks, confidently keeping the music going. He's quiet and friendly. He's never needed to have a huge ego or a loud voice. His talent speaks for itself, as does his reputation. I think he's one of the few legendary figures in the Welsh music scene, and his place in hip-hop history in general is assured, definitely.
Yo, I'm Jaya, I had a dream. And when I think of DJ Jaffa, I think of one of UK's finest. I think of Cardiff's like hip-hop genius. He's always putting people on, upcoming artists, old school artists. He's just got a hype around everyone who he thinks is sick, but he's got a very selective ear. But, you know, he always spreads love. Also, he's done a lot of things and he doesn't brag about it. He's very, very humble, but he's actually got a lot of history in the hip-hop scene that people might not even realise. Yeah, he's very well known, but at the same time, I don't think people realise how deep it is and how many flowers he deserves. Yeah, bless up.
Yes, world, it's the artist formerly known as Mudmowth. And when I was making hip-hop, I was lucky enough to get to perform with Jaffa a good few times and build a relationship with him. The first thing that comes to my mind when I think of Jaffa is pure kindness, happiness, and a massive smile. Every time I've seen him at hip-hop gigs, he's always wearing that same kind of smiley, happy face. And behind that is just a mean DJ who everyone in the hip-hop scene respects and loves. You know, I think you could go to any hip-hop night in Wales and you pretty much guarantee Jaffa's involved in some shape or form. And that's from big acts down to, you know, smaller local acts. Jaffa's always there supporting, playing your music, putting your tunes on mixtapes. He really does feel like the heartbeat of the Welsh scene, to be honest. Yeah, I kind of wonder what Welsh hip hop would be without Jaffa, because he's helped push so many people. And you know, I remember him playing one of my tunes in a club in Higher Learning back in the day, and just being amazed, like, oh, DJ's playing my music, and it gave me the push to continue doing what I was doing. So I got nothing but love for DJ Jaffa, as I'm sure everybody does.
What's happening? It's Johnny B, Cardiff's longtime MC. And when I hear the name DJ Jaffa, the first thing that springs to mind is watching him spin on his head at Lamramy's Eastern Leisure Centre. This is when he was a b-boy around 1983-84. And I've got proud memories of him DJing for me at Raw Based in St Mellons Community Centre back in 1991. I remember him inviting me to jam at his house on numerous occasions in the early 90s, which really helped me to develop as an MC. But in a nutshell, when I think of DJ Jaffa, I think pioneer, legend, hard-working, loving family man, and just super supportive to all hip-hop artists. He's a pillar in Welsh hip-hop, and I'm proud to call him my friend.
I'm Ricardo Banks. I'm a DJ from Cardiff, and I'm here to say some nice words about Jaffa. He blends selection, he's got good technical mixing, he's got a lot of groove in his sets, and obviously he uses a lot of vinyl. So I appreciate he does a bit of everything. He honours older music and like the culture of the music scene, like hip-hop especially. He does that with integrity, but he doesn't gatekeep. He's always pushing new music and younger artists. He's always happy to see hip-hop evolve. He's very inclusive, which I think is super empowering for someone in his position. And I think that's huge. I think that says a lot about him as a character. So he's a bit of a role model, in all honesty, for me as a DJ. I think for a lot of other DJs as well. He's a DJ's DJ.
Yo, what's up? B-boy Kwam here from Cardiff. Not only Jaffa, just a hip-hop DJ, he was also an old school B-boy. I remember meeting Jaffa back in Welsh Club when he had Hustler Night. I remember seeing him dance. He always takes his shoes off while breaking. So Jaffa do understand the music that us B-boys love to dance to. So we always go to his nights. So without Jaffa around, we probably got nowhere to go to jam and dance. So yeah, so big up Jaffa. Hopefully he'll be around for another 50 years. Big up!
This is Markel of Bad Belly, one of what I like to call the originals, the founders of hip-hop in Wales, and it's a message of thanks to one of the original DJs, Cardiff's own DJ Jaffa. He was there at the start and he'll be there at the end. I salute you, sir. Peace.
Yo, what's up, people? This is Rollo, representing Cardiff. Let me tell you about DJ Jaffa. DJ Jaffa is a legend in the game. If you listen to hip-hop music, then you've definitely heard the name. Without him, Welsh hip-hop just wouldn't be the same. My first foray into making tracks, he supported me from day. Consistent in his diligence, his spinning remains unchanged. The young crown king of Wales never fails to bring the flames. Mixtapes to showcase the latest music people made. True to the game, from old school to the new wave. Decades of doing this, but the passion never stopped. You can still find him in the clubs, repping the best of hip-hop. Underground cream of the crop, but to me he's on top. cutting and chopping whatever's popping us on lock. Always listening, supporting and helping others. Selfless in his quest to rep all the up and comers. Jaffa's the DJ who brings the vibes for the night, the embodiment of hip hop, and he has been for life.
Hey, we're the greatest promotion to our past. We want to give a big shout out to Jaffa.
Jaffa's music was really powerful at the battles and it set a good atmosphere.
It was really good to have someone as inspirational as Jaffa. I think Jaffa's music was amazing.
I think Jaffa's music was intense and powerful and I enjoyed it.
It was great having someone as legendary as Jaffa DJing, and we can't wait for next time.
Hey, this is Mr. Pedro, and just a couple of words on the impact of DJ Jaffa on Welsh, Cardiff and Welsh hip-hop. Personally, I remember Jaffa when I was like 13 years old, so I was just a kid, and I watched him mix hip-hop in front of me, and sparked an interest. I up until then, I hadn't seen anyone mixing hip-hop live, so it kind of had a massive effect on me, to the point where I went on later on to become a DJ in my 30th year next year. So I strongly believe, and I've told Jaffa this, I think without Jaffa's influence and guidance, I don't think I would have been doing what I'm doing. So I don't think you give anyone more accolade than that. The fact of the matter is, if there was no Jaffa, there wouldn't have been no me. My life would have been a lot different. So he's definitely, Jaffa has enriched my life. So I can't give any more accolade than that. Guy's a legend.
Yo, it's Joe Dirt, DJ Jaffa. What can I say? He's the best. He's the best at what he does, and it's simple. Ask anyone. He's everywhere. He's done it all. He's been doing it since the beginning. He is Welsh hip hop. He's helped me out so many times as well in the past, being my impromptu DJ. When I used to rock up to a show with like a CD or a USB stick with my set on and no DJ, but Jaffa was there, boom, sorted, every time without fail. And it was a massive privilege to have him do the cuts on my last album. He is the man, he is hip hop. If you haven't got Jaffa on your album, you ain't hip hop.
Hi, I'm Miles Day from Cardiff. I used to run the hip hop and funk night called The Sure Shot in Goody Hoo. Nowadays I'm part of Pamoja Disco Club, spinning rare groove. My first memory of Jaffa is seeing him beat juggling in the Toucan Club in the early 2000s, and it blew me away. Hip hop in Wales doesn't exist without Jaffa. He's done so much from grassroots level to being on the lineups with the biggest names in hip hop. He's a proper selector with great taste. He can rock a crowd, keep you dancing. He's a technical wizard, scratching, juggling, mixing. His podcasts feature brand spanking new sounds from up-and-coming artists, and for Cardiff, Wales and the UK, he's an ambassador, welcoming everybody into the community with open arms.
Yes people, it's Jem from Winger Records. Just want to drop a quick line about Jaffa. DJ Jaffa is a legend in the scene. He's been a constant in Welsh hip-hop since the very beginning. He's always supported everyone, he's always DJing at events, he's running his own radio show, he's featuring on people's albums, he's always supporting people, he's always been there and he always will be there.
Yo, what's happening? Dave Akton of Larynx Entertainment. When I think about Jaffa, I think about Welsh hip hop, and when I think about Welsh hip hop, I think about Jaffa. The two are synonymous with one another due to the support and the contributions that Jaffa has given to everyone and everything that is hip hop in Wales. Early days when we were doing our research for Larynx, didn't matter who you spoke to, whether they were in North Wales, South Wales, West, East, or smack bang in the middle of nowhere, Jaffa's name would come up and spoken with the utmost praise and respect.
This is Slicer Man of the Headgish Lads and Goat Boy. Bigging up my man DJ Jaffa. I think his legacy speaks for itself. Started in the late 80s, mid to late 80s, and he hasn't stopped since. Constantly helping people. He was there around about the time we made our first LT in Cardiff, and constant support. You know, love the man. I got nothing but praise for him. Guy's a legend. I'm sure he'll influence many future generations of hip hop in Wales. Yeah, he's definitely the one at the top.
what's happening? This is Tom Wallace of Kicked in the Face Promotions, based in Cardiff. When I think of DJ Jaffa, I think of a pioneer and ambassador of Welsh hip-hop. I mean, he's been DJing since something like the mid-80s, so he's probably one of the first ever Welsh hip-hop DJs. But what I think is really cool about him, other than being a great DJ, is how he's always taken the time to promote up-and-coming artists. Like, if you look at his social media channels, it's just full of him sharing music and gigs by young, new artists. So he's very generous in using his platform to grow the scene. And I just think it's really cool how he's remained so connected to the Welsh hip-hop scene for all these years.
Yo, this is DJ Locke from London. Bigging up DJ Jaffa. Thanks for your support, man. Always appreciate you. And big up for what you do for Wales, man. Keep smashing it.
Yo, what up? This is DJ Moneyshot from the Allergies crew, based in Bristol now, but I started life coming to Cardiff in the late 90s as a massive hip-hop fan. And the first face you see on the scene, or at least I did, was DJ Jaffa. I think I was walking down the Castle Arcade. Was it the window of Catapult? Maybe Whoosh? Doing an in-store? Maybe with DJ Cash Money. I think it was that gig was on. And just see this dude with so much calm and collect skill and poise, doing doubles, and all vinyl back then, of course. In the window, and there was hushed tones, people were saying it was Jaffa. And the dude just looked like he belonged there. And in many ways he did, because getting to know him and realising he is the Mount Rushmore face of hip-hop DJing in Cardiff. Over the years I got better DJ, got some residencies, Hustler Showcase, and then Enthusiasm and Maloko, where he was a resident as well, so spent many nights there. Yeah, just marvelling at his skill, and he's one of the people that kept it 100 the whole way. The dude has got an unwavering love of hip-hop, and it shows, and he should be celebrated. So this is DJ Moneyshot saying, big up to Jaffa. What a legend.
Hi, my name's MC Mercury, from a band, UK hip-hop band, way back in the 90s called Gunshot. I've known Jaffa for probably over 25 plus years, if not longer. We actually used to work in a fast food restaurant in Oxford Street many moons ago, and he's always been the same since then. It's like a very, very dedicated brother, a good soul, do you know what I mean, a good family man, and more importantly, absolutely, you know what I mean, rock of hip-hop in the Welsh side of things, you know what I mean, absolute mainstay, cornerstone, top solid brother. Big up Jaffa.
Yes, people, this is Captain Barritt. Now, a lot of people play fast and loose with the term legend, but when I say DJ Jaffa is a legend, I mean the tales are going to be told for generations to come of that masterful DJ who could rock a crowd for 70 hours. He was there at the beginning of time, well, hip-hop in Wales at least, and he will continue to be there. And he's grown alongside across the generations, never once staying still even long enough to become old school. He came for the art, he stayed for the art, and has never lost his passion for the art. We are very lucky here in Wales to have him.